Welcome to Japanese Sleep Whispers, your sanctuary for peaceful nights and gentle dreams. Here, you will find calming bedtime stories inspired by the timeless beauty and traditions of Japan. Each story is read slowly in a soothing voice, accompanied by natural sounds such as flowing rivers and the tranquil rhythm of shishi-odoshi. Whether you seek relaxation, relief from stress, or help falling asleep, these tales invite you to drift away into a world of serenity. Imagine quiet temples, moonlit gardens, and the whispering bamboo forests as you listen. If you'd like these soothing stories to be part of your nightly routine, consider subscribing so they're always with you when you need them. Subscribe and let these stories be your nightly ritual of calm and rest. Thank you for being here. May you always find peace in every moment. Moonlight over the hidden shrine. Prologue. Moonlight at the Torii Gate. The night was quiet in the valley, wrapped in the embrace of mountains whose slopes descended gently into a river that carried the voice of the forest. A faint mist rose from the water, silvered by the moon above. In that soft light, every detail of the countryside seemed both vivid and dreamlike, as though painted in ink upon delicate rice paper. At the edge of the village stood an ancient torii gate. Its pillars, darkened by centuries of rain and sun, leaned ever so slightly, yet held firm as guardians of a path that led into the forest. Beyond the gate, shadows thickened, and silence deepened, as if one step past the threshold carried travelers into another world. The villagers spoke of the hidden shrine beyond those trees, though rarely in direct words. It was a place wrapped in reverence, not fear, for the shrine was said to hold the memory of the land itself, the murmur of pines, the fragrance of earth after rain, the rhythm of the seasons. Few sought it, for there was no need. Its blessings reached them in the whisper of wind over rice fields and the gleam of starlight reflected in the river. Yet tonight, the moon was unusually bright. Its pale glow stretched across the sky like silk unrolled from the heavens, falling in quiet layers over roof tiles and narrow paths. The air was still, except for the occasional call of an owl hidden among the cedars. Time seemed to pause, and in that pause, the gate waited. A traveler approached. He walked slowly, his footsteps muffled by the packed earth of the road. He carried a satchel at his side, a walking stick polished smooth by long use, and a lantern whose flame danced gently with every motion of his hand. His eyes, weary from many days of wandering, lifted to the torii. The gate, silhouetted against the moon, seemed less like wood and more like a passage carved from light and shadow. He stopped before it, bowing his head slightly, though no one was present to see. Respect was instinctive here, born not of custom but of atmosphere. The torii was no mere structure, it was the border between the world of people and the quiet heart of nature. He breathed deeply, letting the night air fill his lungs, cool and rich with the scent of pine needles. Somewhere in the distance, water trickled, the faint song of a hidden spring. Closer by, leaves rustled though no wind touched them, as if unseen hands stirred the branches in greeting. The traveler listened. The forest was alive, but not in a restless way. It breathed slowly, a rhythm older than his own life, older than the road that had brought him here. He raised his lantern, and the small glow spread over the base of the gate. Moss clung to the stone foundations, soft and green even in moonlight. Tiny insects flickered above it, sparks in the darkness, as if the stars themselves had descended for a closer look. The traveler spoke softly, his words meant as much for himself as for the unseen presence beyond the gate. "I have come a long way," he murmured. "If there is a path for me here, may I walk it with care." The forest did not answer, yet its silence felt like assent. He stepped forward. The moment his sandal touched the earth past the gate, the night seemed to deepen. Not darker, but quieter, as if the world behind him faded and the one ahead drew near. The lantern flame wavered, then steadied. The traveler inhaled again, the scent of cedar and damp stone enveloping him, grounding him. The path curved gently, stones half buried in earth guiding his way. To either side, tall trees rose like pillars in a grand hall. Their crowns swayed softly against the night sky, and the moonlight, slipping through their branches, dappled the ground in silver patches. Each step seemed to echo, not in sound but in sensation, as though the earth remembered his passing. He thought of the stories he had heard of a shrine hidden where moonlight lingers longest, where prayers are carried not by voices but by the hush of leaves. Some said the shrine was tended by spirits, foxes with eyes that gleamed like lanterns. Others whispered of an old monk who had not aged in centuries, guarding the threshold between dream and waking. But the traveler did not seek legends. He sought rest, a quiet place where his wandering heart might find stillness. If the shrine were real, then perhaps it would offer that. If it was not, then the journey itself, under moon and pine, would be enough. The path rose slightly, and soon he reached a small clearing. Here, the moonlight fell unhindered, bathing the ground in pale radiance. At its center stood a weathered stone lantern, its surface rough with lichen, yet still dignified. He placed his hand upon it, feeling the coolness of stone, and bowed once more. For a moment, he closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids, the silver glow remained, soft and steady, like a gentle hand resting upon his thoughts. His breathing slowed. The world outside seemed distant, and only the hush of the forest remained. When he opened his eyes again, the torii behind him was already half hidden by mist. Ahead, the path wound deeper, promising more silence, more moonlight, more stories carried in the wind. The traveler lifted his lantern once more and walked on, his footsteps merging with the rhythm of the forest. The night, calm and endless, welcomed him. And so his journey into the hidden shrine began. Chapter 1: The Whispering Pines. The forest welcomed the traveler with the gentlest of voices. Each pine tree that stood along the path seemed to breathe, its needles catching the moonlight and swaying ever so slightly in the night air. Though the wind was faint, there was a constant rustle, like a secret being passed from one branch to the next. It was not a hurried sound, nor a warning. Rather, it was the cadence of a lullaby, patient and unending, as if the trees themselves wished to soothe whoever walked beneath them. The traveler slowed his pace. His lantern cast a soft circle of light, revealing the uneven stones beneath his feet. The path was old, perhaps as old as the torii itself, worn smooth where countless feet had once walked. Now, moss covered much of it, and roots from nearby trees pressed upward, claiming their share of space. He stepped carefully, but without worry. The forest seemed to guide him, each stone and shadow showing where his foot should fall. Above, the pines stretched tall, their trunks straight and solemn. He tilted his head back, watching them vanish into the night sky, their tops shivering against the bright round moon. For a moment, he felt very small. Yet it was not an uncomfortable smallness. Instead, it reminded him that the world was vast and steady, and his own troubles, though heavy, could be carried lightly beneath such trees. A breeze stirred, and the sound of needles brushing against one another rose and fell like the tide. To his ears, it was more than sound, it was speech. He could not make out words, but he understood their meaning in his heart. You are not alone. Walk gently, and you will be carried forward. The traveler smiled faintly. He did not often speak to trees, but tonight he felt no hesitation in listening to them. He let his shoulders relax, his breathing fall in rhythm with the hush of the forest. Each exhale seemed to join the sigh of the pines, until he no longer felt like an intruder but a guest welcomed to linger. The path curved deeper into the forest, where shadows thickened. His lantern, though small, glowed brightly against the dark. Moths circled it now and then, their wings whispering against the glass. He watched them dance, fragile and fleeting, like drifting thoughts. As he walked, he began to notice other voices beneath the pines. The steady chirp of crickets, the distant croak of a frog near unseen water, and the occasional flutter of wings overhead. Together, they wove a fabric of sound, soft and unbroken, as if the entire forest were singing a single song. It was not a melody of notes, but of presence, each creature adding its breath to the same great silence. The traveler remembered stories from his childhood, tales told by his grandmother as they sat by the hearth on winter nights. She had spoken of spirits who lived among the trees, foxes that carried lanterns, and pines that whispered to those who would listen. At the time, he had thought them fanciful, no more than stories to fill long evenings. But here, under the moon and the watchful gaze of the forest, he wondered if those stories were less invention and more memory, passed down like seeds. His steps carried him to a wider part of the path where two great pines leaned inward, their branches crossing high above to form a kind of archway. Beneath it, the ground was carpeted with needles, soft and fragrant. He paused there, lowering his lantern. The flame glowed warmly, but the moonlight was enough. He set the lantern upon a stone, knelt, and placed his hands against the earth. The soil was cool, alive with dampness. He closed his eyes. For a long while, he simply breathed and listened. The forest whispered again, but this time he felt something stir within him. Not words, not even images, but a sensation of being held. It was as though the trees remembered every person who had walked this path, every pilgrim, every wanderer, and now they remembered him too. He belonged to that lineage, carried gently by the voices of the pines. When he opened his eyes, a soft glow caught his attention. To the side of the path, just beyond the reach of his lantern, fireflies had gathered. Their lights pulsed slowly, rising and falling in waves, like stars breathing in the undergrowth. He watched, entranced, as their glow moved in rhythm with the forest's whisper, as though the pines themselves had kindled the tiny flames. He rose and retrieved his lantern, though he felt almost reluctant to disturb the scene. As he lifted it, the fireflies scattered gently, drifting deeper among the trees. Yet even as they faded, the whisper of the pines remained, steady and comforting. The traveler continued. His mind, once crowded with the dust of roads and the weight of distance, now felt lighter. The forest had given him a gift, not answers, but peace enough to keep walking. The night stretched before him, but he no longer measured it in hours or steps. He measured it in breaths, in the soft susurrus of needles, in the way the moonlight painted silver paths across the earth. Each moment was its own arrival, and each arrival asked nothing more than stillness. And so he walked on, listening always to the whispering pines, who carried him gently, deeper into their heart. Chapter 2: Lanterns along the path. The forest path deepened, winding slowly as though it had no destination at all, only the pleasure of leading those who followed it. The traveler's lantern swayed at his side, its flame a tiny sun, no larger than the heart of a flower, yet steady enough to light each step. As he walked, he began to notice shapes along the trail. Here and there, half hidden by vines or leaning against roots, stood stone lanterns, weathered and worn, but unmistakable. Some were tall and slender, others squat and round, their surfaces cloaked in moss that glowed faintly in the moonlight. None of them bore flame, and yet each seemed alive, as if the memory of light still lingered within. The traveler paused at the first lantern he came upon. Its small window was filled with shadows, yet when he raised his lantern close, the stone shimmered faintly, almost like old embers glowing far beneath the surface. He reached out a hand and brushed the moss gently. The air grew still, and for an instant, he thought he heard a sigh, so quiet it might have been his own breath echoing back to him. He whispered, though no one was there to hear, "May your light continue, even if unseen." With that, he bowed and continued. As he walked, more lanterns revealed themselves. Some leaned toward the path as if bowing in greeting. Others stood back among the trees, half swallowed by roots and ivy. Each time he passed one, he felt as though unseen eyes followed his progress, not with suspicion, but with calm acknowledgement. The deeper he walked, the more numerous the lanterns became, as though guiding him toward some unseen center. Their arrangement was not strict, not the neat line of a temple approach, but rather scattered gently like stars across a night sky. He thought of constellations, of how sailors once read the heavens to find their way. Here, the lanterns seemed to be stars fallen to earth, mapping a path in their silence. A cool breeze drifted through the trees, and with it came the faint sound of water, distant yet constant, like the breath of the mountain itself. The traveler followed the sound, his steps soft against the earth. The pines whispered overhead, their voices mingling with the hush of water until he could not tell where one ended and the other began. He reached a small clearing where 3 lanterns stood together, forming a kind of circle. In their midst was a flat stone, smooth and broad, as though waiting for someone to sit and rest. The traveler placed his lantern upon the stone and sat beside it, stretching his weary legs. The flame flickered, casting shadows that danced across the mossy surfaces of the old guardians. The night deepened around him. Owls called softly from hidden perches, their voices low and resonant. Insects sang their ceaseless songs. Yet within the circle of lanterns, the traveler felt sheltered, as though enclosed in a room whose walls were woven from pine branches and moonlight. He closed his eyes for a while, allowing the night to wash over him. The rustle of leaves, the rhythm of crickets, the distant flow of water all blended into a lullaby older than words. His body grew heavy, his mind light. Sleep brushed at the edges of his thoughts. But before slumber could take him, the flame in his lantern wavered. His eyes opened, and he saw a soft glow rising within the stone lantern nearest to him. At first, he thought it was a trick of the firelight, but as he watched, the glow grew steadier, filling the hollow chamber of the stone with a gentle radiance. It was not the sharp flame of his own lantern, but a softer, cooler light, like the moon condensed into a single drop of brightness. Soon, the second and third lanterns began to glow as well, their inner spaces brightening until the circle shimmered with pale fire. The traveler sat very still. The light did not dazzle his eyes, nor did it cast harsh shadows. Instead, it mingled with the moonlight, spreading outward in delicate layers that touched the ground, the trees, and his face with a calm, silvery warmth. He felt no fear. The glow was not meant to startle or command, but to welcome. It was as though the forest itself had decided to keep him company. For a long while, he remained seated, breathing slowly, letting the light soak into him. Each lantern pulsed faintly, as though breathing too, their rhythm matching the steady hush of the forest. He thought again of stars. These were stars that had chosen to walk beside him on earth, guiding his night's passage. Eventually, the glow began to fade. One by one, the lanterns returned to shadow, their gift of light offered and complete. The traveler bowed his head in gratitude, whispering, "Thank you." He retrieved his lantern, which still burned quietly, and rose to his feet. The path ahead seemed clearer now, though no brighter. It was as if the memory of the lantern's glow remained, etched into his steps, reminding him that he was not wandering blindly but being gently shown the way. The journey resumed, slow and steady. More lanterns appeared along the trail, each silent, each waiting, as though they too might awaken at the right moment. The traveler did not try to stir them. He trusted they would reveal themselves when needed. The forest thickened once more, shadows deepening between the trunks. Yet the moon remained high, and its silver touch never faltered. He followed it as much as he followed the path, feeling as though the heavens and the earth had conspired to guide his night's pilgrimage. At last, the sound of water grew stronger, carrying with it the scent of damp stone and cool air. The traveler's heart lifted. Perhaps there would be a river ahead, or a bridge where the path and water met. And with it, perhaps another gift of light, waiting to be found. Holding his lantern before him, he walked on, accompanied by the memory of the glowing stones and the endless whisper of the forest. The night was not lonely. It was alive with lanterns, seen and unseen, guiding him gently along the path. Chapter 3: The River's Lullaby. The sound of water had been with the traveler for some time now, soft at first, no more than a distant murmur carried on the night air. With each step along the path, it grew clearer, like a song that invited him gently forward. Soon, the forest opened just enough to reveal a river, flowing slowly and steadily under the watch of the moon. The traveler paused at the edge of the clearing. Before him stretched a wooden bridge, simple in its design, its planks darkened with age and weather. Moss clung to its edges, and vines trailed down toward the water below. Yet the bridge stood firm, arching gracefully from one bank to the other, as though it had always been there, waiting for those who sought the shrine. The river beneath was calm, its surface broken only by small ripples where stones rose just above the current. Moonlight touched the water, scattering silver across its face, while the reflection of the pines trembled gently with every movement of the stream. The air was cool here, carrying with it the fresh scent of water and the faint perfume of wildflowers hidden along the banks. The traveler drew closer, listening. The river spoke in many voices, the bubbling around rocks, the low hush of deeper currents, the sudden splash of a fish turning beneath the surface. Together, these voices blended into a lullaby, unhurried and patient. It was the sound of rest, of dreams carried downstream to the sea. He stepped onto the bridge. The wood creaked softly under his weight, not in protest, but as if greeting him. He moved slowly, his lantern lighting each plank. Beneath him, the water caught the glow, bending it into wavering patterns that danced across the current. For a moment, it seemed as though stars had fallen into the river, their reflections carried away by the flow. Halfway across, he stopped and leaned upon the railing. The river stretched on in both directions, vanishing into the darkness of the forest. He watched as mist rose from its surface, curling upward like the breath of a dream. It swirled around his lantern, softening its flame until it looked no brighter than a single firefly adrift on the night air. He listened again. The lullaby of the river was constant, steady, a rhythm that seemed to slow his own heartbeat. He let his eyes close, allowing the sound to cradle him. The worries of the road, the dust, the weariness, the unanswered questions dissolved, carried away like fallen leaves on the current. When he opened his eyes, he noticed something at the far side of the bridge. A stone lantern stood upon the riverbank, half hidden by reeds. Its chamber glowed faintly, not with the flame of fire, but with a cool, silvery light, the same shade as the moon above. The light did not flicker or waver, it simply existed, steady and calm, as if born from the river itself. The traveler bowed toward it, then continued across the bridge. Each step felt lighter, as though the lullaby beneath his feet bore some of his weight. When he reached the far side, he approached the glowing lantern. Its surface was worn smooth by years of wind and rain, yet the moss that covered it seemed to shimmer faintly, touched by the same mysterious light. He placed his hand gently upon the stone. It was cool to the touch, and in that coolness, he felt the river's song more deeply, as if it passed from stone to skin, from water to bone. His breath slowed once more until it matched the rhythm of the stream. The traveler whispered a quiet thanks, though to whom he spoke he did not know the river, the lantern, the forest, or perhaps all of them at once. He lowered his lantern to the ground, and for a brief moment, the two lights, one warm and flickering, the other pale and steady, rested side by side, like companions sharing a silence. After a while, the silvery glow of the stone lantern began to fade, leaving only the flame of his own lamp. Yet the memory of its light lingered, as if the river itself had breathed into him a calm that could not be extinguished. He lifted his lantern again and looked ahead. The path resumed beyond the bridge, winding once more into the embrace of the forest. The pines swayed gently, their voices now joined with the lullaby of water that followed him even as he stepped away. The traveler took one last look at the river. Its surface shimmered in the moonlight, endless and serene, carrying dreams to places unseen. Then he turned and walked onward, his footsteps light, his heart steadied by the song of the current. And so, with the river's lullaby at his back, he entered deeper into the night, guided by water, moon, and whispering pines. Chapter 4: The Old Monk's Tea House. Beyond the river, the path narrowed again, winding between tall pines whose shadows stretched long in the moonlight. The traveler's lantern swayed gently in his hand, its glow steady but small against the great stillness of the forest. He had walked far, yet he did not feel weariness in the same way as before. The lullaby of the river lingered within him, lightening his steps, calming his thoughts. Still, the night was deep, and even the most patient wanderer must rest. As he walked, he noticed a faint scent drifting through the air, subtle at first, then clearer, like smoke touched with sweetness. He slowed, lifting his head to breathe it in. It was the fragrance of tea leaves warmed by water, carrying with it the memory of hearth and comfort. Curious, he followed the scent. Soon the path curved, and there, tucked among the trees, stood a small tea house. Its walls were of wood darkened by age, its roof thatched with straw, soft and moss-tipped. A paper lantern hung by the entrance, glowing with a pale flame that swayed in the night breeze. The house seemed both humble and eternal, as if it had always been here, waiting for those who needed it. The traveler approached quietly. Before he could call out, the sliding door opened with a soft sound, and an old monk appeared. His robe was simple, the color of faded earth, and his face was lined with many seasons. Yet his eyes shone clear, like still water reflecting the moon. "You have walked far," the monk said, his voice low and gentle, carrying no surprise. "Come inside. The night is long, but tea makes it shorter." The traveler bowed in gratitude and stepped within. The tea house was small but warm. Tatami mats covered the floor, their straw scent blending with the fragrance of tea. A single candle burned in the alcove, casting a soft glow over a scroll that bore the character for silence. Beside it, a vase held a branch of pine, freshly cut, its needles bright against the dark wall. The simplicity of the room soothed the traveler at once, as if every object within it had been placed with care to quiet the heart. The monk gestured for him to sit. He set down his lantern and lowered himself onto the mat, folding his legs beneath him. Soon, the monk returned with a small tray, 2 cups of steaming tea, their porcelain thin and pale as the moon. He placed one before the traveler, then settled opposite him. The traveler lifted the cup with both hands, feeling its warmth spread into his palms. He brought it to his lips and sipped. The tea was light, almost transparent in flavor, yet it carried depth, like the memory of rain upon stone. It flowed gently through him, easing the last remnants of his weariness. For a time, neither spoke. The quiet of the tea house was its own companion, filled with the sound of steaming water, the faint creak of wood, the distant murmur of the forest outside. The traveler found himself breathing more slowly, each breath in rhythm with the warmth of the tea. At last, the monk spoke. "You have come seeking the hidden shrine." The traveler looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" The monk smiled faintly. "All who pass this way seek it, though not all know why. Some come with prayers, others with questions. A few come simply because their feet will not rest. It matters little. The shrine receives each as they are." The traveler considered these words. He wished to ask what the shrine was, what it held, but something in the monk's voice told him that answers, if they came, would not come from words. Instead, he asked, "Have you seen it yourself?" The monk's eyes lowered to his cup. "I have lived long in this forest. I have brewed tea through countless nights, watched the seasons turn and return. The shrine is not far, and yet it is farther than most expect. It does not appear to those who hurry. Only to those who walk as the moon walks slowly, without haste, lighting the world one step at a time." The traveler nodded. He felt the truth of it, even if he could not explain why. The monk poured more tea, the liquid steaming softly in the cool night air. "Drink," he said. "When you leave, the path will carry you where you must go." They drank together in silence. The tea was not strong, but it filled the traveler with warmth that reached deeper than his body. He felt as though he were drinking the forest itself, the pine-scented air, the damp earth, the whisper of water. Each sip was both present and eternal. When the cups were empty, the monk gathered them quietly. He rose and slid open the door, allowing the silver moonlight to spill into the room. The forest outside waited, unchanged yet inviting. The traveler stood, bowing deeply. "Thank you. For the tea, and the rest." The monk returned the bow with equal depth. His voice was as calm as the still night. "Carry the quiet with you. The shrine listens best to those who arrive with silence in their hearts." The traveler retrieved his lantern and stepped outside. The door slid closed behind him, leaving the tea house once more a part of the forest, humble and unseen. Yet the warmth of the tea lingered in his chest, a steady glow to guide his way. The path stretched forward, deeper into the night. The pines whispered. The river's lullaby echoed faintly behind. And in the traveler's heart, the calm voice of the old monk remained, like tea poured endlessly from an unseen pot, warming him with every step. Chapter 5: The Hidden Shrine Revealed. The path grew narrower as the traveler left the tea house behind. Pines arched overhead, their branches weaving together until the sky was no more than a lattice of moonlight and shadow. The air was cooler here, heavy with the fragrance of cedar and damp earth. Each step forward felt quieter than the last, as though the forest itself were listening. The traveler carried his lantern, but the flame seemed almost unnecessary now. The moon was full, and its light poured through the branches in silver streams, illuminating the path with a calm that no human hand could match. Still, he held the lantern out of respect, for it had guided him faithfully through the night. As he walked, the whispers of the forest shifted. The pines no longer spoke in scattered murmurs but in a steady hush, like 1,000 voices blending into one. It was not words he heard, but an invitation, as if the trees urged him forward toward something they had long kept hidden. The air thickened with silence until the only sounds were his breath and the faint creak of his sandals upon stone. Then, at last, the trees parted. He stepped into a clearing bathed entirely in moonlight. There, at the center, stood the hidden shrine. It was smaller than he had imagined, yet it held a presence far greater than its size. Its wooden beams, darkened with age, gleamed softly in the light, as though polished by centuries of moon and rain. The roof curved gracefully, its edges touched with moss, its tiles shining faintly with dew. A simple rope of rice straw hung across the entrance, from which white paper streamers fluttered in the night air. No lanterns burned, no incense smoke rose, and yet the shrine seemed alive, as though every tree, every stone, every breath of wind had gathered here to bow in silence. The traveler lowered his lantern and set it upon the ground. For a moment, he simply stood, his heart quiet, his body still. Then, instinctively, he bowed. There was no thought behind the gesture, no plan, only a deep recognition that the place before him was worthy of reverence. He stepped closer. The moss beneath his feet was soft, the air cool against his skin. The shrine did not dazzle or overwhelm, it welcomed, like an old friend who had been waiting patiently. Its silence was not empty but full of memory, full of listening. The traveler placed his hands together and closed his eyes. He did not speak aloud. He did not form precise words. Instead, he allowed his thoughts to drift, like leaves upon a stream, gratitude for the road behind him, hope for the road ahead, and a quiet longing for rest. The silence received his prayer and held it gently, without judgment, without reply. In that quiet, he felt something stir, not outside, but within. A calmness deeper than sleep, deeper than thought, settled into him. It was as though the shrine reflected not only the moonlight, but his own heart, steady and untroubled. When he opened his eyes, the shrine shimmered faintly, as if the moonlight had grown stronger. For an instant, he thought he saw figures among the trees, shadows shaped like foxes, their eyes glimmering softly, their bodies poised in watchful stillness. But when he blinked, they were gone, leaving only the rustle of pine needles in the breeze. He smiled, unafraid. Whether spirit or shadow, it was all the same, the forest was alive, and it had welcomed him. The traveler sat upon the steps of the shrine. He did not hurry to leave. Instead, he let the silence wash over him, each moment a tide that drew him deeper into calm. His lantern flame flickered beside him, small and humble, yet in harmony with the vast light of the moon. He rested there for a long while. The shrine did not demand devotion, nor did it require understanding. It asked only presence, his being, here, now, beneath the moon, among the trees. And so he gave it. When at last he rose, the shrine remained as it had always been, still, waiting, timeless. Yet within the traveler, something had shifted. The path ahead was no longer unknown, it was simply unwritten, and he was ready to walk it. He bowed once more, lifted his lantern, and stepped back into the forest. The shrine faded behind him, hidden once again among the pines. But its quiet remained, carried with him like the steady glow of moonlight in his heart. Chapter 6: The Garden of Stillness. Beyond the shrine, the path led downward into a hollow where the forest thinned. The traveler walked slowly, his lantern held low, though the moon was bright enough to guide him. Soon the trees opened, and he found himself before a garden unlike any he had seen on his journey. It was not wide, nor did it boast of color or grandeur. Instead, it lay quiet and unassuming, shaped by time rather than by hands. Moss spread across the ground in soft carpets, its surface glistening with dew. Stones, smooth and patient, rose here and there among the green, placed not by design but by the natural rhythm of years. Small rivulets of water trickled through the garden, threading between moss and stone, their sound as soft as a whisper. The traveler paused at the edge. The air here was different still, yet alive, filled with a silence that was not empty but full. It was the silence of presence, the hush of a space that needed nothing more than what already was. He stepped gently onto the moss. It yielded slightly beneath his sandals, springy and cool. He lowered his lantern, and the glow fell over tiny sprouts, each no taller than a fingertip, yet shining with the freshness of life. The moss seemed to breathe, as though the entire garden exhaled in harmony with the night. A path of stepping stones wound through the garden, leading toward a small basin carved from rock. From above, a bamboo pipe dripped water slowly, each drop falling with a clear sound that echoed in the stillness. The traveler approached and knelt beside it. He watched the drops gather, grow heavy, and fall, one by one. The sound was delicate, yet it filled the entire garden. Each drop was a bell, each pause between them a silence deeper than sound. He cupped his hands and let the cool water gather there. He drank, and the freshness spread through him like moonlight pouring into a darkened room. The traveler lingered, listening. The moss beneath him, the stones beside him, the water before him, all were speaking in their own way, though none used words. Together, they created a presence that asked for nothing but stillness. He sat cross-legged upon the moss, set his lantern aside, and closed his eyes. The hush of the garden surrounded him. He felt the dampness of the air upon his skin, the faint scent of pine drifting from the forest beyond, the rhythm of water as it fell and rested. Slowly, his thoughts grew quieter, like dust settling in a beam of light. In the stillness, he felt no need to move, no urge to speak. The world within him and the world around him were not separate but the same. Each breath was the garden's breath, each heartbeat its pulse. Time slipped gently away. He could not say how long he sat there, minutes or hours, but it mattered little. The garden was timeless, and while he remained within it, he too was part of that timelessness. When at last he opened his eyes, the garden was unchanged. The moss still glistened, the stones still rested, the water still fell in its endless rhythm. Yet he felt changed, lighter, as though the garden had taken his weariness and returned it to the earth. He rose slowly, bowing toward the basin. The water answered with another drop, falling clear and perfect into the stone. He retrieved his lantern and followed the stepping stones back to the edge of the garden. As he left, he turned once more to look behind him. The Garden of Stillness lay in the moonlight, silent yet alive, waiting for the next traveler to pause, to breathe, to belong. And with its quiet presence carried within him, the traveler stepped once more into the forest path. His heart as calm as the moss, his spirit as steady as stone. Chapter 7 Dreams Beneath the Cherry Blossoms. The forest began to open again, and the traveler noticed a change in the air. It carried a softness he had not felt before, a faint sweetness that mingled with the scent of pine and moss. Ahead, the path led into a grove where cherry trees had gathered, their branches stretching outward as though to embrace the night. The moonlight fell upon the blossoms, turning each petal into a small, pale lantern. They swayed gently in the breeze, scattering a light rain of soft shadows across the forest floor. The petals themselves shimmered faintly in the silver glow, as if kissed by the moon. The traveler slowed, letting his lantern hang at his side. He could see that the ground beneath the trees was blanketed in fallen petals, soft and fragrant, cushioning his steps like a carpet woven from dreams. He felt the air itself quiet around him, carrying only the faint sigh of blossoms brushing one another in the breeze. He chose a spot beneath the largest tree, where the branches formed a gentle canopy overhead. Kneeling, he set his lantern upon the ground and rested his hands on his knees. Above him, the blossoms swayed ever so slightly, their delicate movements casting ever-changing patterns of light and shadow. He closed his eyes. The scent of the cherry blossoms mingled with the cool night air, carrying him into a space beyond thought, beyond time. In this quiet, he began to dream not in sleep yet, but in the soft realm of imagination that precedes it. He imagined the blossoms rising from their branches, floating gently upward into the night sky. They became stars, countless and delicate, moving slowly in silent arcs above the forest. Their light was soft, comforting, like a lullaby sung by the moon itself. In the dreamlike vision, the river he had crossed earlier appeared, silver and slow, winding through valleys and forests. The water carried the blossoms along its surface, petals drifting as if riding on currents of calm. He saw the fox shadows he had glimpsed near the shrine, now moving silently alongside the river. Their eyes glowing softly in the moonlight, guiding each petal with care. The traveler felt a gentle warmth spread through him, a sense of belonging to this quiet world. The forest, the river, the shrine, the garden, they were no longer separate from him. He was a part of them, and they were a part of him. The moonlight that fell upon the blossoms seemed to pour into his chest, filling him with a light that was neither hot nor cold, neither bright nor dim, but perfectly balanced, steady, and endless. As he sat beneath the canopy, the petals began to descend again, floating down toward him like gentle whispers. One landed softly on his shoulder, another upon his hand. He reached out, letting them drift through his fingers. Each petal carried a faint warmth, a tiny heartbeat of life, as if the forest itself had pressed a blessing into his hands. He lay down upon the carpet of petals, letting them cradle him. The lantern beside him flickered gently, casting a small circle of warmth, but the moonlight above was enough. The whispers of the pines, the lullaby of the river, the soft breathing of the moss garden, all of these filled his ears as he closed his eyes fully, surrendering to the night. In his mind, the world of the shrine and garden, and the river flowed together. Time ceased to matter. Every breath he took was in rhythm with the petals falling, the river flowing, the pines whispering. Every heartbeat matched the pulse of the forest, slow and calm. He drifted further into dreams, cradled beneath the cherry blossoms. The moon shone steadily above, casting its gentle light across the grove, and the night carried his soul softly forward, through silence and shadow, through memory and imagination, until all that remained was the steady, endless peace of the forest itself. And there he rested, suspended between the waking and the sleeping, wrapped in the tender embrace of petals, moonlight, and the endless hush of the trees. Chapter 8: The Fox and the Moon. The traveler awoke beneath the cherry blossoms to the faint silver of moonlight that had shifted slightly across the grove. The petals around him rustled gently as if stirred by an unseen breath, yet no wind touched the trees. He rose slowly, brushing the soft flowers from his shoulders, and continued along the forest path. The moon hung low and bright, its reflection spilling over the mossy stones and shallow streams. The air was cool, carrying the soft scent of pine and earth, and every step he took seemed to echo quietly, though he heard nothing but the hush of the forest. As he rounded a bend, he saw a small fox sitting atop a rock near a pool of water, its fur shimmering faintly in the moonlight. Its eyes glowed like two tiny lanterns, steady and knowing, neither fearful nor threatening. The traveler paused. He had heard the stories of fox spirits who guided travelers, or played tricks on them, but here, the fox seemed serene, even deliberate. The fox did not move, yet the traveler sensed it beckoning him forward, as though inviting him to follow. Without fear, he stepped closer. The water mirrored the moon, and the fox's reflection shimmered beside it. As he watched, the fox rose gracefully and trotted along the edge of the stream, pausing as if to ensure he would follow. The traveler obeyed, his lantern held high, yet the path ahead was already faintly lit by the glow of the moon and the reflections in the water. The fox led him gently, never rushing, always maintaining a space just beyond reach, guiding without words, guiding without force. They reached a small clearing where the moonlight pooled on a stone circle. Here, the fox stopped and sat, its tail curled neatly around its paws. It regarded him with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. The traveler knelt, lowering his lantern, feeling the stillness settle over him. A soft rustle came from the trees, the pines whispering in harmony with the distant murmur of the river. The fox tilted its head, and in that subtle motion, the traveler felt a connection not through sight or sound, but through a shared understanding of the night itself. He realized then that the fox was not leading him to a destination, but teaching him to walk within the moment, to notice the flow of moonlight on stone, the reflection of trees in water, the gentle pulse of the forest in every leaf and every breath. The path was not the goal, the path was the lesson, and the fox was a quiet guide, showing him how to be present. The traveler lowered himself to sit upon a mossy stone. The fox remained seated across from him, silent, yet its presence filled the clearing. The lantern's flame flickered softly, harmonizing with the faint glow of the moon and the fox's eyes. Time seemed to slow. Each breath, each heartbeat, each rustle of pine needles became its own small universe, complete and infinite. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours, though it was impossible to say. The traveler closed his eyes, allowing the hush of the clearing to enter him fully. He felt the calm of the fox seep into his being, a steady warmth that matched the rhythm of his own heart. When he opened his eyes, the fox had risen and turned, as if signaling it was time to move on. The traveler stood, and together they continued along the path. They did not speak, yet their pace was in perfect harmony. The moon reflected in the stream beside them, guiding them forward, while the whisper of the forest and the distant lull of the river carried them gently along the way. Eventually, the fox paused at the edge of the grove, near the beginning of a gentle slope leading upward. It looked back one last time, its eyes soft with quiet encouragement. The traveler understood. The fox had brought him this far, shown him how to move with the night, and now it was time for him to continue alone. The fox vanished silently into the shadows, leaving only the memory of its light and the calm it had imparted. The traveler inhaled deeply, feeling the cool night air fill him with peace. He continued up the slope, the path illuminated by moonlight, his heart steady, his mind quiet, and the forest whispering behind him. Above, the moon remained, its glow unchanged, serene, and eternal, like the quiet guidance the fox had left within him. Chapter 9: Pilgrimage to the Mountain. The path began to rise. The trees thinned gradually, and the sound of the forest softened as the traveler moved upward. His lantern swayed gently with each step, yet the moonlight alone was enough to illuminate the winding trail. Each stone and root beneath his feet felt familiar, as though the forest itself remembered his passage. The slope was gentle at first, carpeted with moss and pine needles, but steadily it grew steeper. The traveler did not hurry. Each step was deliberate, each breath steady, in rhythm with the forest and the mountain itself. He remembered the fox, the cherry blossoms, the garden, the shrine, all guiding him quietly along this night journey. Along the path, small stones were arranged carefully, marking the way, some carved with faint characters, others plain and unadorned. He stepped lightly over each, letting his attention linger on the shapes and textures, feeling their connection to the earth. Each stone seemed to hum with the slow pulse of the mountain, a heartbeat older than time. Above, the moon remained high, its light spilling over the slopes, illuminating the pine trunks and rocks in gentle silver. Occasionally, a cloud drifted by, softening the glow, as if the sky itself were breathing in rhythm with the traveler's calm steps. He paused at a small clearing where the trees opened to reveal the distant horizon. Below, the village lay quiet, its roofs and roads softened by shadows. Furthermore, the river glimmered faintly, tracing its path like a silver ribbon through the dark landscape. The traveler breathed deeply, letting the cool night air fill him. Here, he felt both the vastness of the world and the intimacy of the moment, the mountain embracing him as he embraced it. Further up, the path narrowed and became steeper, winding between rocks and roots. He encountered small lanterns, some glowing faintly with moonlight reflected in polished stone. Others dark and silent, yet all serving as guides along the ascent. Occasionally, the distant sound of running water reached him, the same lullaby of rivers and streams he had followed before, now elevated and distant. Carrying the memory of the lower valleys with him. The climb was meditative. Each step, each breath, each movement of his hand along the stone or tree was a prayer without words. The traveler focused not on the summit, nor on what lay ahead, but on the act of walking itself. The mountain demanded nothing more than presence, and in return offered clarity, calm, and quiet strength. At one point, he paused beside a cluster of wildflowers growing from a rock ledge. Their petals were pale in the moonlight, delicate and soft. He knelt briefly, brushing his fingers against them, feeling the resilience of life in the harsh slope. In that small act, he sensed the patience of the mountain life persisted gently, steadily, without hurry or complaint. He resumed the climb, the path weaving ever upward, each turn revealing new glimpses of the night sky through the thinning trees. Occasionally, the branches opened wide enough to reveal the stars, countless and steady. Mirrored faintly by the glow of lanterns and distant village lights below. The traveler felt the enormity of the universe alongside the quiet intimacy of the trail beneath his feet. Finally, he reached a plateau near the summit. Here, the trees opened fully, revealing the shrine he had glimpsed from below, now bathed in a wider expanse of moonlight. The air was thinner, cooler, yet filled with a profound calm. The forest, the river, the garden, and the fox all seemed to converge here in a single, silent harmony. The traveler rested upon a large stone, the lantern at his side casting a soft glow. He inhaled the mountain air deeply, letting it cleanse him, filling his lungs with the quiet strength of the night. His journey upward had not been about speed or distance, but about awareness, presence, and the gentle unfolding of the path. He closed his eyes. Around him, the mountain seemed to breathe with him, its slopes and stones, its pines and shadows, all moving in a slow rhythm of life and night. The summit was not a destination to conquer, but a place to simply be, suspended between earth and sky, forest and moon, movement and stillness. And there he remained for a long while, listening to the wind, the distant river, and the murmur of pine needles brushing one another. Every step of the climb had led him to this serene balance, and he allowed himself to sink fully into the calm, carrying the forest, the shrine, the fox, and the garden within him. When at last he rose, it was with a sense of completion. The path down would be gentle, the forest welcoming, and the world at peace. He carried the mountain's quiet strength with him, steady and unhurried, ready to return to the world below. Chapter 10 Returning with Dawn. The traveler began his descent from the mountain plateau as the first hints of dawn touched the horizon. The night had been long, filled with moonlight, whispers of pines, the lullaby of rivers, and the gentle guidance of foxes and lanterns. Now, the sky lightened gradually, a soft wash of pink and gold spreading across the eastern clouds. The path downward was gentle, winding among familiar pines and moss-covered stones. Each step felt lighter than the last. The forest, which had been his companion throughout the night, seemed to sigh softly in the morning air, welcoming the new light. Birds stirred in the branches, calling to one another in soft, melodic greetings. The river whispered faintly below, carrying reflections of the dawn sky. He passed the tea house, still quiet and serene, its paper lanterns dim in the rising sun. The scent of tea lingered faintly in the air, a memory of warmth and comfort. He bowed to the small building, though no one was there to see, offering thanks for the rest and guidance it had given him. Further down, he returned to the garden of moss and stone. The water trickled over the basin as before, each drop a tiny bell ringing in harmony with the morning light. He knelt briefly beside it, letting the cool water touch his hands. In this final moment of reflection, he felt the journey of the night settle fully within him: the shrine, the fox, the cherry blossoms, the lanterns, the river, all now threads woven into the quiet tapestry of his memory. As he reached the river once more, the full light of dawn spread across its surface. The water shimmered in gold and silver, reflecting the awakening sky. He paused on the bridge, watching the gentle current. For a moment, he thought he saw the fox's shadow glide across the water's edge, then vanish into the light, leaving only peace in its place. The traveler continued toward the village, each step slow, deliberate, and calm. He no longer needed the guidance of lanterns or foxes. The memory of the night's journey had become a light within him, steady and unwavering. The world itself seemed quieter now, touched by the hush of night that lingered even as day began. By the time he returned to the village, the sun had risen fully, spilling warmth across rooftops, fields, and rivers. The air was filled with the subtle sounds of morning chickens calling softly, water flowing through canals, leaves rustling in gentle wind. Yet the traveler walked with a quiet smile, carrying the calm and clarity of the hidden shrine within his heart. He paused at the edge of the village, looking back toward the forest and mountain. They stood timeless, silent witnesses to his journey, holding the secrets of moonlight, foxes, lanterns, and blossoms. The traveler bowed once more, feeling gratitude for the night and all it had given him. Then, with the dawn warming his shoulders, he continued forward. Not in haste, not in urgency, but with steady steps and a tranquil heart. He knew the world would carry on, but now he walked within it differently, aware, present, and at peace. And as the morning light spread over the village and valley, the echoes of the night, the whispering pines, the river's lullaby, the glow of lanterns, and the gentle guidance of unseen guardians remained with him, soft and enduring, like a dream carried into waking. The quiet forest at dawn. Prologue. The silent valley. The valley was quiet. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. It was a silence that carried weight, a silence woven from the breath of the earth itself. Beneath the pale light of a waning moon, the forest stretched outward in a soft expanse of green and shadow, draped in mist that clung to every pine and stone. A stream wound its way through the valley floor, silver in the dim light, its surface shivering gently with the touch of morning air. The sound of its waters was not loud but constant, a steady murmur that seemed less like noise and more like the earth's own heartbeat. Every ripple caught the faintest glow of the stars above, now fading, as the world leaned gently toward dawn. The trees that bordered the stream stood tall and ancient, their roots woven into the soil like threads of memory. Pines rose in solemn ranks, their needles whispering faintly whenever the faintest breath of wind passed through. Beyond them, maples and cherry trees stretched their branches, their leaves and blossoms soft in the dim light, waiting for the sun to reveal their colors. The valley carried with it the scent of damp earth, of moss, of wood that had known centuries of rain and sun. It was a fragrance that calmed the heart, grounding any who entered within its embrace. Even in the shadows, the valley felt safe, as though it had watched over countless travelers and would continue to do so, long after memory faded. A faint mist hovered above the ground. It curled and shifted with the stream, drifting upward between the trees, softening their shapes until the entire forest seemed like a dream only half remembered. The mist caught the glow of the moonlight, making the air shimmer as though the valley itself exhaled light. Somewhere in the distance, the first bird stirred. Its call was not sharp, not sudden, but gentle, as though it too recognized the sanctity of the hour before dawn. Another answered, and then another, until the forest carried the beginnings of a soft chorus, fragile, hesitant, but filled with life. Their voices rose and fell with the rhythm of the stream, blending seamlessly into the hush of the valley. On a narrow path that wound along the stream's edge, a traveler walked slowly. His steps were quiet, his sandals brushing against moss and stone, never disturbing the harmony around him. He carried no burden but a small lantern, its flame dim against the vast glow of the moon. The lantern swayed with each step, casting faint circles of gold that faded quickly into the mist. The traveler paused often, not out of weariness, but out of reverence. At every bend in the stream, at every arch of pine branches overhead, he lingered, breathing deeply, allowing the silence of the valley to seep into him. His journey was not one of haste. He did not seek to reach an end, but to move gently through the spaces between moments, to allow the valley to reveal itself in its own time. He knelt once by the stream, cupping his hands to gather water. The liquid was cool, smooth, almost luminous as it slipped through his fingers. He drank, and the freshness spread through his body, easing the remnants of night from his limbs, filling him with quiet strength. For a moment, he closed his eyes, listening not only to the sound of the stream, but to the sound of his own breath, blending into the valley's rhythm. The mist thickened briefly, curling around him like a cloak. He did not resist. Instead, he sat upon a moss-covered stone and allowed the valley to hold him. The world beyond villages, roads, voices seemed impossibly distant, as though they belonged to another life. Here, there was only the forest, the stream, the moonlight, and the slow turning of the sky toward dawn. He felt as though he had entered a space between dreams and waking, a threshold where the earth whispered truths too delicate for daylight. In the stillness, the traveler thought of nothing and everything. At once of rivers that had flowed for centuries, of trees that had watched countless seasons, of the moon that had risen and fallen beyond number. Time did not move here as it did elsewhere. It lingered, stretched, dissolved. Gradually, the sky shifted. The darkness softened to gray, and the mist glowed faintly as though lit from within. The first blush of dawn brushed the horizon, so gentle it seemed like a breath across the earth. The stars retreated slowly, not with haste, but with grace, as though yielding their stage to the new light. The traveler rose once more. His lantern flame flickered, then dimmed against the growing glow of the sky. He lifted it anyway, not out of need, but out of respect. It had carried him through the night, and though the sun would soon take its place, the lantern was a companion still. He looked across the valley. The stream shimmered more brightly now, the trees revealed their colors: deep green pines, tender blossoms tinged with pink. The moss glowing richly against the stones. The silence did not vanish with the dawn. It remained, transformed into a deeper calm, the silence of awakening rather than of sleep. The traveler stepped forward. The path continued, winding gently along the valley floor, leading toward hills that now caught the first light of the sun. He did not know what lay ahead, but he did not need to. The valley itself had taught him that every step was enough, that every breath contained the fullness of the journey. As he walked, the birdsong swelled softly, blending with the murmur of the stream. The mist lifted slowly, rising toward the treetops, dissolving into the warming air. And the valley, still quiet, still eternal, opened itself to the dawn. The traveler moved on, his steps light, his heart steady, carrying with him the hush of the silent valley. A calm that would not leave him, even as the day unfolded. Chapter 1: The Path Beneath the Pines. The traveler left the valley floor and followed a narrow trail that curved upward into the forest. The path was lined with tall pines, their trunks rising like pillars, their crowns woven together high above, where the last threads of night clung. The air beneath the canopy was cool and fragrant, filled with the resinous scent of pine needles and the damp sweetness of moss. Each step upon the path was cushioned, the ground softened by years of fallen needles. The sound was faint, like the brush of silk, barely disturbing the hush of the morning. The traveler's lantern glowed weakly now, for the sky had begun to brighten. A faint silver light filtered through the branches, blending with the lantern's gold, creating a gentle harmony of shadow and glow. The pines whispered, not with words, but with the subtle shifting of needles in the morning air. Their voices rose and fell together, as though the entire grove breathed in one slow, steady rhythm. The traveler paused to listen, tilting his head toward the sound. In that moment, he felt as though the forest was welcoming him, not with ceremony, but with the simple openness of presence. He walked slowly, unhurried, allowing the forest to reveal itself in its own time. To his left, a trickle of water slipped between stones, hidden by moss but audible in its soft, steady rhythm. To his right, the slope rose gently, covered in ferns that unfurled like the fingers of some ancient hand. A crow called once in the distance, its voice echoing between the trunks before fading into silence. The traveler paused again, not to rest, but to breathe. He placed his hand against the rough bark of a pine, feeling its coolness, the ridges shaped by years beyond counting. The tree did not move, yet it felt alive beneath his palm, pulsing faintly with the slow strength of the earth. He bowed his head slightly in quiet reverence, then moved on. As he continued, the path began to climb more steeply. Sunlight filtered through the branches, casting long, delicate beams that painted the mist in gold. Dust motes and tiny insects shimmered in the light, drifting slowly, as if suspended between earth and sky. The traveler raised his eyes and watched them, their stillness reminding him of stars lingering after dawn. Further along, he came upon a small stone marker at the side of the trail. Its surface was rough, softened by moss, its carved characters nearly worn away. He knelt beside it, tracing the grooves with his fingertips, though the words were unreadable. The stone stood quietly, like a guardian who asked for nothing but to be noticed. The traveler bowed, then rose and continued along the trail, his steps lighter, his heart attuned to the forest's quiet. The pines thickened once more, their shadows deeper, their whispers stronger. The traveler's lantern flickered, then finally he extinguished it, for the day had arrived enough to guide him. He hung the lantern at his side, not as a burden, but as a companion, a reminder of the night's journey. The forest grew brighter as he walked. The mist lifted, revealing patches of moss glowing green, stones gleaming with dew, and the first flowers of spring peeking from the earth. Their colors were faint in the dim light, but they carried a promise of warmth, a reminder that the world was alive and waiting for the sun. At last, the traveler reached a bend in the path where the trees opened slightly. Here he paused, for the view stretched outward across the valley he had left behind. The stream shimmered faintly in the dawn, winding like a silver ribbon through the mist. The tops of the trees caught the first rays of sunlight, glowing softly as if lit from within. The traveler breathed deeply, filling his lungs with the cool air. He closed his eyes and listened once more. The whisper of the pines, the murmur of water, the faint calls of waking birds. Each sound was gentle, yet together they formed a harmony deeper than any silence. It was the song of the forest itself, a song that asked nothing but attention. When he opened his eyes, he felt a calmness settle more deeply within him. The path continued upward, leading farther into the embrace of the pines, farther into the heart of the morning. With steady steps, unhurried and at peace, the traveler moved on, carrying the forest's hush within him. Chapter 2: The River's Breath. The path bent gently downward, leading the traveler toward the sound of moving water. At first, it was faint, a whisper beneath the rustle of pine branches. But step by step, the murmur grew clearer, steadier, until it seemed as though the earth itself was breathing through the stones and roots. He followed the trail until it opened beside a river, wide yet calm, flowing with the grace of something eternal. Mist hovered above its surface, curling like pale ribbons, shifting with the rhythm of the current. The river shimmered faintly in the growing light, silver in shadow, gold where dawn touched it. Its song was constant, never hurried, never still, a music that carried the valley's quiet heart. The traveler stopped at the edge of the water. He stood for a long moment, listening. The river's sound was not only in his ears, it filled his chest, resonated in his breath, and steadied the beating of his heart. Each ripple, each swirl against stone, was like a soft drum echoing in the silence. A heron stood in the shallows, tall and patient. It did not move when the traveler approached, only shifted slightly as if acknowledging his presence. Its feathers caught the dim light, pale gray tinged with silver. For a moment, the bird and the traveler seemed to share the same stillness, bound by the rhythm of the flowing water. Then the heron stretched its wings, broad and silent, and lifted into the mist, vanishing as though it had never been. The traveler knelt at the river bank, resting his lantern beside him. He dipped his hands into the water, feeling its coolness wash over his skin. The touch was gentle but alive, carrying with it the strength of distant mountains and hidden springs. He lifted the water to his lips, and as he drank, the freshness spread through him, dissolving the weight of the path behind him. He closed his eyes. The river's voice surrounded him, steady, unbroken, deep. It was not a sound to be listened to, but a presence to be entered, like stepping into a vast and endless breath. He felt the rhythm move through him, in, out, in, out. His own breathing slowed to match it. When he opened his eyes again, the mist was shifting, revealing glimpses of the opposite shore. There, moss-covered stones rose like small islands, and beyond them, the forest stretched on, its trees blurred into dreamlike shapes. The river was not a boundary but a mirror, reflecting the world as if it were half awake, half dreaming. A small wooden bridge arched across the water farther upstream. Its planks were darkened by time, its railings softened by moss. The traveler began to walk toward it, his steps quiet upon the path that followed the river's edge. Along the way, he noticed small details: reeds bending gently with the current. A cluster of stones where the water rippled in tiny whirlpools, the faint trace of animal footprints pressed into the soft earth. At the bridge, he paused. The river flowed beneath him, calm yet unceasing. Leaning against the railing, he watched the current slip past, each droplet a part of something endless, something whole. He felt again that this was the earth's breath, the life that moved unseen but ever present, carrying everything in its flow. A breeze drifted down from the forest, stirring the mist and brushing his face with coolness. The traveler closed his eyes once more and allowed the moment to hold him. He did not think of where the river began or where it would end. It was enough to know it moved, steady and eternal, carrying its quiet song through the valley. After a long while, he lifted his lantern again, though its flame was nearly invisible in the growing light. He stepped from the bridge and followed the path that rose gently beyond the river bank. The sound of the water lingered behind him, softer with each step, until it became not a sound but a memory, one that would remain within him, steadying his breath as he continued. And so he walked, leaving the river but carrying its hush, its rhythm, its endless presence within him, like a secret gift from the dawn. Chapter 3: The Old Bridge. The path rose gently from the river's edge, curving through groves of pine and maple before returning once more to the water. There, the traveler found an old wooden bridge spanning the river where its current widened and slowed. The bridge was simple in form, yet it carried the quiet dignity of long years. Its planks were darkened by age, polished smooth by countless feet, softened at the edges by moss that grew where the wood met stone. The handrails leaned slightly, their shape weathered, as if they had bent under the patient touch of time. Each beam seemed to hold memory, as though the bridge remembered every traveler who had crossed it, every season of sun and rain. Every breath of mist rising from the river below. The traveler paused at the threshold, resting one hand upon the rail. The wood was cool, damp from the morning air. He could feel its strength, though it creaked softly beneath his touch. A voice not of weakness but of age, like the sigh of an elder who has lived long and deeply. He stepped forward slowly. The boards shifted faintly under his weight, the sound blending with the murmur of the river beneath. The bridge seemed alive, not in movement, but in the way it responded each creak and groan. A reminder that it was part of the valley, part of the endless flow of time. The traveler moved to the center of the bridge and paused. Below him, the river spread wide and calm, carrying the reflections of the trees and the pale sky above. The mist still hovered, though thinner now, curling gently around the posts of the bridge, drifting upward like breath released into the cool air. The water's surface rippled, distorting the reflections, as though reminding him that nothing in this world remains fixed. He leaned upon the railing, watching the current pass. The sound of the water echoed softly against the wood, creating a rhythm both steady and soothing. It was a lullaby of the earth itself, ancient and unbroken. For a long time, the traveler did not move. He listened, he breathed, he watched the play of light upon the water. He thought of those who had crossed this bridge before. Him farmers carrying baskets at dawn, pilgrims on quiet journeys, children chasing dragonflies in the heat of summer. Though he did not know their names, their steps seemed present still, echoing faintly in the creak of the planks, in the soft hum of the river's song. A small bird alighted on the railing beside him. Its feathers were pale brown, its eyes dark and alert. It tilted its head, studying him briefly before hopping closer, unafraid. For a moment, the traveler and the bird shared the bridge in silence, two wanderers meeting by chance. Then, with a flutter of wings, the bird lifted into the air, disappearing across the river into the trees. The traveler smiled faintly and lifted his gaze. The sky was brighter now, streaked with the faintest colors of dawn. The tops of the pines shimmered in the new light, their needles glowing softly. The mist thinned further, revealing the full breadth of the river, the stones along its edges, and the reeds swaying gently in the breeze. He took another step, then another, moving slowly across the bridge. Each board answered him with a soft creak, a voice of wood and memory. He walked as if listening to those voices, allowing them to guide his pace, to steady his breath. When he reached the far side, he paused once more and turned back. The bridge stretched behind him, quiet and unmoving, a ribbon of wood connecting one shore to the other. He bowed slightly, not in ceremony but in gratitude for the passage, for the stillness. For the reminder that even the simplest of paths can carry the weight of time with grace. The traveler lifted his lantern, though its light was nearly lost in the morning glow, and continued along the trail. The forest welcomed him again, branches arching overhead, the air cool and fragrant. Yet as he walked, the hush of the old bridge lingered within him, steady as the flow of the river, calm as the breath of dawn. Chapter 4: The Lantern Shrine. The path curved gently upward, away from the river and the old bridge. Pines lined the trail once more, their tall forms steady and solemn, their shadows long in the early light. The traveler walked slowly, his lantern swaying at his side, though its flame was nearly invisible now. A hush settled deeper into the air, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. At last, the path opened to a clearing. There, set among moss and stone, stood a small shrine. Its wooden frame was simple, its roof weathered by countless rains and seasons of snow. Yet despite its age, the shrine carried an air of quiet grace, as though time had passed gently around it, never disturbing its heart. Flanking the shrine were stone lanterns. Their forms were softened by moss, their carvings worn smooth, yet each one stood firmly, as if rooted in the earth itself. The traveler approached slowly, pausing before the first lantern. Though no flame burned within, the stone seemed to hold a memory of light. As if it had once carried countless nights of warmth, guiding travelers with a steady glow. He bowed slightly to the lantern, then to the shrine itself. The air here felt different, cooler, yet somehow filled with presence. The faint rustle of pine branches overhead seemed hushed, subdued, as if in reverence. Even the birdsong that had filled the morning air was softer now, more distant, as though the forest recognized this place as sacred. The traveler stepped onto the worn wooden platform before the shrine. He set his lantern down gently, though he did not need its light. For a long moment, he stood still, listening. The silence was not empty, it was full. It seemed to hum faintly, a vibration beneath the surface of things, steady and calm. He placed his hands together and closed his eyes. His breath slowed. He did not speak a prayer aloud, for none was needed. His presence was enough, his breath itself a quiet offering. In that stillness, he felt the weight of the forest, the flow of the river. The sigh of the old bridge all gathered here, woven into the hush that surrounded the shrine. When he opened his eyes, he noticed details he had not seen before. Tiny ferns grew between the stones at the shrine's base. A droplet of dew slid slowly down the edge of the roof, falling at last onto the moss below. A single ray of sunlight pierced the canopy above, illuminating one of the stone lanterns, making the moss upon it glow with a soft green light. The traveler smiled faintly. He reached into his pack and drew forth a small offering, a handful of rice wrapped in cloth, simple and humble. He placed it before the shrine, bowing once more. The act was quiet, unobserved, yet it felt significant, as though the earth itself had received it. A breeze stirred gently, rustling the pine needles, making the shadows shift across the clearing. For a moment, the shrine seemed almost to breathe, its wooden frame alive with the presence of unseen guardians. The traveler felt no fear, only calm, as though he were being watched over, held gently within the embrace of the forest. After a long time, he lifted his lantern once more. He stepped back from the shrine, pausing to bow again, his heart steady, his breath quiet. The path continued beyond the clearing, winding deeper into the forest, but he did not rush. The hush of the lantern shrine lingered within him, like a flame that did not fade, a light carried not in his hand but in his heart. And so he walked on, leaving the shrine behind, though its presence walked with him still, quiet as dawn, steady as stone. Chapter 5: The Garden of Dew. Beyond the lantern shrine, the path narrowed once more, curving gently through clusters of pines and maples. The traveler moved quietly, his steps soft against the mossy earth. The morning light was clearer now, yet still gentle, filtered through leaves and branches, never harsh. It fell in slivers, illuminating patches of green and gold, as though guiding him onward with delicate care. Soon, the forest opened to a hidden garden. It was small, almost secret, enclosed by low stone walls softened by moss. Within, the ground was carpeted in green, a living quilt of moss and grass, each surface glistening with beads of morning dew. The droplets caught the light of dawn, glowing like countless tiny stars fallen to earth. The traveler paused at the entrance, struck by the stillness of the place. The garden did not feel shaped by hands, yet it bore the quiet order of intention. Stones were placed with care, their shapes natural yet harmonious. A small basin of water rested at the center, carved from a single stone, its surface trembling gently as droplets fell from a bamboo spout above. Each drop echoed in the hush, a soft sound like the slow striking of a bell. He stepped inside slowly, mindful not to disturb the ground. His sandals brushed lightly against the moss, leaving no trace. The air here was cool, fresh, touched with the scent of earth and water. The garden seemed alive, though in no hurried way. It breathed in stillness, each dewdrop a part of its silent rhythm. The traveler knelt beside the stone basin. He dipped his hand into the water, feeling the coolness spread across his skin. He lifted a few droplets, watching them slide from his fingertips back into the basin. The ripples they made were small, vanishing quickly, leaving the surface calm once more. For a long moment, he listened. The sound of the bamboo spout, the drip of water, the hush of leaves moving faintly in the breeze all came together in a pattern as simple as breathing. In, out, drop, ripple, silence, stillness. It was a rhythm not of man, but of the earth itself. Sunlight shifted slowly, falling upon the dewdrops in the moss. They glimmered like jewels, scattering soft rainbows across the green. The traveler watched them, his breath slowing, his body relaxing. Each drop seemed to hold the morning within it, the promise of light, the memory of night. He rose and walked along the stones that bordered the garden. He noticed details with each step: a tiny fern growing between cracks in the wall, a spider's web shimmering with dew, a single flower blooming quietly in the shadow of a stone. Each small thing seemed perfect in its place, needing nothing more than to exist. The traveler paused once more at the center. He bowed slightly, not to a figure or an altar, but to the garden itself. In its quiet balance, he felt a presence as deep as any shrine, as sacred as any temple. The silence here was not empty but full of water, moss, stone, light. When he lifted his lantern again, he found its flame reflected in the droplets, multiplied countless times. It seemed to him that the garden had accepted his presence, not with words, but with the shimmer of dew, the whisper of water, the hush of air. He stepped back through the gate, leaving the garden behind. Yet the calm it carried lingered within him, like the coolness of water held in the palm even after it is gone. The path awaited him once more, leading farther into the forest, toward hills now touched fully by the morning sun. He walked on, steady and unhurried, carrying the garden's hush as though it were a lantern of its own, glowing softly within. Chapter 6: The Fox of Dawn. The traveler followed the path upward, leaving the garden of dew behind. The morning was brighter now, yet still softened by mist that lingered among the trees. Sunlight filtered through the branches in long, slanting beams, touching the moss with gold, setting tiny droplets aglow. The air was cool, carrying with it the faint fragrance of pine needles and earth. As he walked, he felt the forest watching. Not with eyes, but with presence. The silence was deep, yet not empty. It carried a quiet fullness, as though unseen companions moved gently in the spaces between trees. It was then that he saw it. At the edge of the path, half hidden by mist, stood a fox. Its fur was pale, almost white, though tinged with silver where the light touched it. Its eyes were dark and steady, reflecting both shadow and dawn. The fox did not move when the traveler noticed it. Instead, it stood calmly, its form clear yet ethereal, as though it belonged to both this world and another. The traveler stopped, bowing his head slightly. He felt no fear, only a quiet reverence. The fox tilted its head, its gaze calm, unhurried. It did not beckon, did not turn to lead the way. It simply remained, watching, its stillness as steady as the trees themselves. For a long moment, the two regarded one another, the traveler and the fox, human and spirit, both held in the same breath of dawn. The mist curled around them, carrying the faint shimmer of light, softening every edge until the world itself seemed like a dream. At last, the fox moved. Slowly, gracefully, it stepped onto the path. Its paws made no sound upon the earth. It did not approach directly, but walked a short distance ahead, pausing to glance back once. Its eyes met the traveler's, calm and unwavering, before it turned again, continuing along the trail. The traveler followed. Not hurried, not hesitant, but steady, as though walking in rhythm with the fox's silence. He felt no sense of destination, only presence each step, each breath, each heartbeat shared with the hush of the forest. The path curved gently upward, the trees opening to patches of sky. The fox walked always a little ahead, never far, never near. At times it vanished into the mist, its form dissolving like smoke, only to reappear farther along, waiting in quiet patience. When they came to a clearing, the fox stopped. The grass there glistened with dew, and a single cherry tree stood in bloom, its petals trembling in the morning air. The fox sat at the base of the tree, its pale fur blending with the mist, its dark eyes steady. The traveler bowed deeply. He did not speak, for words felt unnecessary. His breath itself was an offering, his silence a prayer. The fox watched him for a long moment, its gaze soft yet endless. Then, without sound, it rose once more. It turned from the clearing and walked into the forest, its form fading slowly, step by step, until it was gone. The mist closed gently behind it, leaving only the tree, the dew, and the hush of dawn. The traveler remained in the clearing for a time, standing beneath the cherry tree, listening to the silence the fox had left behind. It was not emptiness but presence gentle, steady, eternal. When at last he moved on, his steps were lighter, his heart quieter, as though he carried the fox's gaze within him, a lantern that needed no flame. And so he continued along the path, the dawn unfolding around him, the memory of the white fox lingering in every breath of the forest. Chapter 7 Blossoms in the Mist. The traveler walked on, the memory of the fox still warm within his heart. The forest path rose gently, curving along the hillside. The mist thickened once more, soft and pale, carrying the scent of damp earth and blossoms just beyond reach. He breathed slowly, each inhalation filled with cool air touched by sweetness, though he could not yet see its source. At last, the trees parted. Before him stretched a grove of cherry trees, their branches heavy with blossoms. The flowers glowed faintly in the dim light, pale pink and white against the silver veil of mist. Some petals had already fallen, scattering across the moss and stones, where they lay like fragments of dawn itself. The traveler stopped, taken by the sight. The grove was silent but alive, each blossom trembling faintly in the morning air, each petal carrying the weight of both beauty and impermanence. It was as though the forest had opened its heart, revealing a secret held only for those who moved slowly enough to see. He stepped into the grove with care, his sandals brushing softly against the fallen petals. The mist curled around him, drifting between the trunks, catching the blossoms in its pale embrace. The petals that fell seemed not to descend but to float endlessly, as though time itself slowed within this place. A breeze stirred gently. The branches swayed, and a flurry of blossoms drifted downward, filling the air with a silent rain of pink and white. The traveler lifted his face, letting the petals fall upon his shoulders, his hands, his lantern. Their touch was lighter than breath, softer than memory. He paused beneath one of the largest trees. Its trunk was broad, its bark dark and rough, yet from it sprang countless delicate branches, each one alive with blossoms. The traveler placed his hand against the trunk, feeling its steady strength. Above, petals continued to fall, covering him in their gentle blessing. The mist thickened for a moment, and in its shifting veil, he thought he saw shapes, perhaps the fox, perhaps the figures of travelers long past, perhaps nothing at all. Yet the vision did not frighten him. It felt instead like a dream unfolding in silence, a reminder that this grove belonged as much to memory as to the present. He sat upon a moss-covered stone, watching the blossoms drift. He did not speak, did not move. His breath slowed, his body grew still. The world around him seemed suspended, each petal falling not in haste, but in quiet eternity. Time passed gently. The mist shifted, and the blossoms continued to fall. And when at last he rose, his shoulders were dusted with petals, his lantern flecked with soft color. He brushed nothing away. He carried them with him, as though the grove itself had chosen to travel with him in silence. At the edge of the grove, he turned once more. The cherry trees stood tall, their blossoms trembling, their petals falling in endless grace. The mist held them in a dreamlike embrace, softening every edge, blurring the line between earth and sky. The traveler bowed deeply. Then he stepped onto the path again, the blossoms drifting behind him, their presence lingering in his breath, their beauty carried in the quiet of his heart. And so he moved on, the morning unfolding, the mist rising, the memory of blossoms following him like a gentle dream. Chapter 8: The Mountain Trail. The path began to climb more steeply now, winding upward along the slope of the mountain. The traveler walked slowly, his lantern swaying at his side, though its light was faint in the morning sun. Each step pressed softly into the earth, carrying him higher, yet never in haste. The forest here grew quieter. Pines stood tall on either side of the trail, their branches steady, their shadows long and cool. Between them, shafts of sunlight broke through, scattering across the moss and stones like golden threads. The air was fresher, thinner, carrying the scent of pine resin and damp earth, touched with the cool breath of the mountain itself. As he walked, the traveler noticed small signs of life. A squirrel darted across the path, its fur shining briefly before vanishing into the undergrowth. Birds sang faintly above, their calls gentle, unhurried. In the shade of a stone, a small cluster of wildflowers bloomed, their colors soft yet vivid against the green. The trail curved often, never straight, as though it wished to prolong the journey rather than hasten the ascent. Each turn revealed a new view, a patch of ferns glistening with dew. A trickle of water slipping down rocks, the sudden brightness of the sky glimpsed through branches. The traveler paused at one bend, resting his hand against the rough trunk of a pine. He looked out and saw the forest spreading below, its canopy a sea of green and mist. Beyond, distant ridges rose and fell in soft waves, their forms blurred by morning haze. The sight was quiet, yet vast, a reminder of the mountain's patient presence. He breathed deeply, letting the cool air fill him, steadying his steps. His breath mingled with the wind, which moved gently along the trail, carrying with it the faint rustle of needles, the whisper of unseen streams. The path narrowed again, bordered by stones half buried in moss. The traveler moved with care, his steps measured, his mind untroubled. Each stone felt placed by time itself, guiding him upward with a rhythm older than memory. From time to time, the traveler lifted his eyes and saw the sky more clearly. The higher he climbed, the thinner the mist became, until patches of blue stretched wider, framed by the steady green of the trees. Sunlight touched his face with warmth, though the air remained cool. He stopped once more beside a spring that trickled across the path. He crouched, cupping water into his hands, drinking slowly. The water was cold, pure, carrying with it the taste of stone and root. He let it linger on his tongue, refreshing yet calm, as though it too carried the mountain's silence. When he rose again, droplets slid down his hands, falling back to the earth. The spring continued to flow, steady, endless, its song soft against the hush of the forest. The traveler walked on. His pace was slow, his steps quiet, yet there was no urgency. The mountain did not call him to hurry. It invited him simply to move, to breathe, to listen. And so he did. Each turn, each step, each breath carried him deeper into the mountain's embrace. The trail rose before him, not as a challenge, but as a gentle offering, a way upward that was also a way inward, a journey not of distance, but of presence. Chapter 9: The Whispering Pines. The trail led the traveler into a grove of tall pines. Their trunks rose straight and steady, reaching high into the morning sky. The air beneath them was cool and shaded, filled with the scent of resin and soft earth. The path was cushioned with fallen needles, so that each step was soundless, as though the forest itself wished for quiet. The traveler paused and listened. At first, he heard nothing but the hush of his own breath. Then, faintly, came a sound, the murmur of wind moving through branches high above. It was not a harsh sound, but soft and layered, like voices speaking gently in a language too old to understand. He closed his eyes. The whispers surrounded him, flowing from every direction, weaving together into a rhythm that was both constant and changing. Sometimes it was low, like a sigh across the earth. Sometimes it rose higher, like a chorus of distant voices. Yet always it remained calm, carrying no urgency, no demand. The traveler opened his eyes again and looked upward. The branches swayed slowly, their tips trembling against the sky. Shafts of light filtered through, shifting as the trees moved, so that the forest floor shimmered with patterns of gold and shadow. The sight was quiet, yet alive, as though the pines themselves were breathing with him. He walked on, his pace slow, his steps measured. The whispers seemed to follow, flowing with him, never fading. At times, the wind paused, leaving the grove in stillness. Then, with the next breath of air, the voices returned, carrying their endless song. The traveler thought of those who had walked this trail before him. Perhaps they, too, had heard the voices, pausing to listen, letting the pines share their secret. The sound felt ancient, as though it had drifted through these branches for centuries, unchanged, waiting for those who would walk gently enough to hear. He stopped beside a great pine whose roots spread wide across the ground, their surface soft with moss. Sitting upon one of the roots, he rested his lantern at his side. The whispers continued above him, surrounding him in a calm embrace. He leaned back against the trunk, feeling its rough bark, steady and unyielding. The longer he listened, the more the sound became like breath. The wind moved in, then out, rising and falling like the rhythm of sleep. His own breathing slowed to match it, steady and calm. The whispers no longer seemed distant, but close, as if they moved not only through branches, but also through him, weaving his presence into the forest. A single pine cone fell softly to the ground nearby, its sound small, yet clear in the hush. The traveler watched it roll gently, then settle among the needles. It was a quiet reminder that all things moved at their own time, guided not by hurry, but by patience. When at last he rose, he felt lighter, as though he too had been carried by the wind's song. He lifted his lantern, bowed slightly to the grove, and continued along the path. The whispers followed him still, soft and unbroken, as though the pines wished to walk with him. And so he moved on, the sound of the forest lingering in his breath, each step a part of the endless song of wind and tree. Chapter 10: The Hidden Spring. The path curved gently downward, carrying the traveler away from the tall pines. The whispers of wind faded, replaced by a softer sound subtle at first, almost imagined. It was the murmur of water, steady and delicate, weaving through the silence of the forest. Following the sound, the traveler came to a hollow where moss-covered stones formed a natural basin. There, from a crack in the mountain's side, water flowed clear and pure. It slipped over the rocks in a thin stream, gathering in the basin before spilling gently into the earth below. The air was cooler here, touched with the freshness of flowing water. Mist clung lightly to the surface, shimmering where sunlight reached it. The traveler stepped closer, kneeling beside the spring. He looked down and saw his own reflection, softened by ripples. Above his reflection, branches swayed faintly, their shapes blending with sky and light. He dipped his hands into the water. It was cold, yet gentle, flowing between his fingers, slipping back to its source. He lifted a handful to his lips, drinking slowly. The taste was pure, carrying with it the quiet strength of stone, the patience of roots, the memory of snow high above. Each sip seemed to calm not only his thirst, but his breath, his thoughts, his heart. For a time, he remained there, listening. The spring's voice was soft but endless, a rhythm without beginning or end. Each drop fell with care, each ripple spread in silence, returning to stillness almost as soon as it began. The sound was steady, like a heartbeat hidden within the earth. A dragonfly skimmed across the surface of the water, its wings catching the light in brief flashes. A leaf drifted down from a branch above, landing upon the spring, circling slowly before sinking beneath. These small motions, quiet and unhurried, became part of the spring's song. The traveler placed his lantern beside him and bowed his head. He did not speak, for no prayer was needed. The spring itself was prayer enough, clear, patient, eternal. He felt that to sit and listen was an offering, and to drink was a blessing. When he rose at last, droplets clung to his fingers, catching the morning light before falling once more to the ground. He lifted his lantern, pausing to bow again toward the water. The spring answered with its steady murmur, unchanged, unbroken. The path continued on the far side of the hollow, rising once more toward the mountain's heart. The traveler stepped onto it slowly, carrying with him the sound of the spring, as though the water now flowed within him, calm and unending. And so he walked on, his steps quiet, his breath steady, the hidden spring's voice lingering in the silence of his journey. Chapter 11: The Bridge of Clouds. The trail climbed higher, winding along the mountainside. The air grew thinner, cooler, carrying with it a faint sweetness, as though touched by sky itself. Mist thickened once more, rising from the valleys below, curling gently around stones and trees. At last, the traveler reached a ridge where the path narrowed into a bridge of wood and rope. It stretched across a wide gorge, its planks weathered, its ropes firm yet softened by age. Beyond the bridge, the mountain continued, veiled in drifting clouds. He paused at the edge, gazing outward. The gorge below was hidden, filled with mist that moved like water, flowing slowly, endlessly. It was not earth he looked upon, but a sea of white, shifting and shimmering as though the world itself were breathing. The traveler stepped onto the bridge. The wood creaked softly beneath his feet, yet held steady. He walked slowly, his lantern swaying at his side, though its flame was pale against the brightness of mist and sky. Each step carried him deeper into the whiteness, until the forest behind him blurred and the mountain ahead seemed like a dream. The wind moved gently, brushing against his face, making the ropes hum with quiet resonance. The mist curled around him, soft and cool, blurring edges, softening distance. It was as though he no longer walked upon earth, but upon air itself, a path between worlds. Halfway across, he stopped. He set his lantern down upon a plank and leaned against the rope, gazing outward. The mist shifted, parting for a moment to reveal peaks rising from the sea of clouds, their shapes distant yet steady, islands in an endless ocean of white. Above them stretched the sky, vast and pale, touched by the warmth of the rising sun. The sight was silent, yet full. It carried no urgency, no demand, only presence. A reminder that the world was vast, yet gentle, and that every step upon it was enough. The traveler breathed deeply, letting the cool air fill him, letting the stillness of the sky rest within his chest. Then he lifted his lantern once more and continued. Each plank beneath his feet felt steady, each step unhurried, until at last he reached the far side. The mountain waited there, its path leading upward once more. Yet the traveler paused, turning back to look at the bridge. It stretched across the gorge, vanishing into mist, as though it connected not places, but moments between earth and sky, between waking and dream. He bowed slightly to the bridge, then stepped onto the mountain's path again. The mist swirled behind him, closing gently, carrying the memory of the crossing into silence. And so he walked on, the bridge of clouds lingering within him, a reminder that even in the highest places, the earth offered not challenge, but grace. Chapter 12 The Temple Bells. The mountain path curved gently, leading the traveler higher still. The mist began to thin, revealing glimpses of tiled rooftops nestled among the trees. The faint outline of a gate appeared ahead, its wooden frame weathered but strong, standing quietly against the morning sky. As he drew closer, the traveler saw the temple itself. Its halls were built of dark wood, their eaves curved gracefully, their presence neither imposing nor grand, but steady, as though grown from the mountain itself. Lanterns hung at the entrance, unlit in the daylight, their shapes swaying faintly in the breeze. The air here was filled with stillness, yet not empty. It carried a sense of waiting, as though something unseen lingered just beyond sound. Then, softly, the silence shifted. A bell rang. Its tone was deep, low, carrying through the mountain like a wave of calm. The sound did not rush, but spread slowly, filling every hollow, every branch, every stone. It lingered long after the strike, fading not into silence, but into presence and echo that seemed to remain even when no sound remained at all. The traveler stopped, listening. The bell rang again, its voice steady, unhurried. Each tone seemed to pass not only through the air, but through him, vibrating gently in his chest, quieting his thoughts, steadying his breath. He stepped through the gate and entered the courtyard. Monks moved slowly there, their robes soft against the earth, their faces calm. None spoke, for none needed to. Their steps were measured, their presence as steady as the bell itself. The traveler bowed his head slightly, then moved toward the great bell that hung beneath its wooden frame. Its surface was dark with age, its carvings worn smooth, yet it carried a dignity beyond time. A monk stood beside it, holding the wooden beam with which the bell was struck. The monk bowed, then let the beam swing gently. The bell's voice rose once more, deep and resonant, flowing across the temple, the forest, the sky. The sound touched everything it met, leaving behind a hush more complete than silence. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the sound carry him. It was not a call, not a command, but a reminder to breathe, to be present, to belong. Each strike of the bell was like a step, measured and calm, leading not upward or outward, but inward, into stillness. He remained there for a long time, listening. The world seemed to slow, each breath aligned with the rhythm of the bell. Even when no tone rang, its presence lingered, as if the mountain itself now hummed softly, steady and eternal. When at last the ringing ceased, the silence was vast, yet gentle. It was not absence, but fullness, as though the bell had left its sound woven into the air, invisible yet unbroken. The traveler lifted his lantern once more. He bowed to the monks, to the bell, to the mountain. Then he stepped from the courtyard, carrying the resonance within him, a quiet that needed no words, a sound that was also silence. And so he walked on, the temple bells still echoing in his breath, each step a part of their unending song. Chapter 13 The Garden of Shadows. Beyond the temple courtyard, the traveler discovered a narrow stone path that curved behind the wooden halls. The air there was cool, touched by the faint fragrance of cedar and moss. As he followed the path, the sound of the temple bell faded into memory, leaving him surrounded by stillness once more. The path opened gently, revealing a hidden garden. It was not filled with flowers, nor with water, nor with lanterns. Instead, it was a garden of shadow and light. Tall trees arched above, their branches woven together, letting sunlight slip through only in scattered threads. The ground was soft with moss, patterned with shifting shapes as the light filtered down. The traveler stepped softly onto the moss. His sandals made no sound. The air was hushed, yet alive, as though the shadows themselves were breathing. Each patch of darkness seemed to hold depth, and each beam of light felt like a blessing, balanced in perfect quiet. He paused beside a stone lantern, its surface worn, its hollow empty. Moss climbed its base, and a fern grew from a crack along its side. Sunlight touched the lantern faintly, making the green shimmer. Yet most of it remained in shadow, a quiet union of presence and absence. The traveler sat upon a low stone, resting his lantern beside him. He looked at the patterns around him, the way branches painted the moss with stripes of shadow, the way leaves above trembled and shifted the shapes. No pattern lasted long. Each moment the garden remade itself, quietly, gently, endlessly. He closed his eyes. Behind them, he could still sense the play of light and dark, the rhythm of brightness and shade. His breath slowed, his body softened. He felt as though the garden itself was breathing with him. Inhale, exhale, light, shadow. A bird passed overhead, its shadow gliding across the moss like a whisper. Then silence returned, deep and calm. The garden did not demand his presence, nor resist it. It simply accepted him, as it accepted stone, leaf, and fern. When he opened his eyes again, the sunlight had shifted. New patterns lay across the ground, different yet the same. The traveler rose slowly, lifting his lantern. He bowed once, not to a figure, but to the garden itself, to its quiet teaching of balance. As he stepped back onto the stone path, the shadows followed him, not as weight, but as calm. The memory of the garden lingered, a reminder that even in darkness, there was gentleness, and in light, there was quiet. And so he walked on, his steps steady, carrying both shadow and light within him as one. Chapter 14 The Path of Lanterns. The traveler followed a narrow trail that wound gently downward. The forest around him was quiet, the morning mist thin, yet the path itself seemed alive. Along its edges stood countless lanterns, small and large, each crafted of stone or wood, each holding a memory of light. Though the sun was rising, the lanterns glowed faintly, their flames soft and steady. They did not compete with the daylight, but harmonized with it, casting gentle pools of warmth upon the moss and stones. The traveler stepped slowly, letting his lantern sway in rhythm with the glowing lights around him. The path curved and turned, and with each bend, the lanterns revealed new shapes. Some were tall, slender, reaching like quiet sentinels. Some were squat, sturdy, resting among ferns and moss. Their light flickered faintly, as though breathing, as though alive in its own gentle way. He paused at a small clearing. Here, the lanterns were arranged in a circle around a single tree, its branches low and wide. The tree was old, its trunk thick with age, yet its limbs bore the softest new growth of spring. The lanterns illuminated it in a warm embrace, shadows and light dancing together, moving slowly as the breeze passed. The traveler knelt before the tree, placing his lantern carefully beside him. He watched the soft glow ripple across the ground, seeing how shadows leaned and shifted with each subtle flicker. He breathed slowly, letting the rhythm of light and shadow guide him, steadying his steps before even moving again. A bird sang somewhere above, its note clear and pure, yet soft against the gentle illumination of the lanterns. The traveler lifted his face, letting the light touch him. It was not bright, not demanding, but warm, like a quiet hand upon the shoulder. He rose and walked slowly along the path. Each lantern seemed to acknowledge him, its glow steady, its warmth subtle. He felt no urgency, no need to hurry. The path existed not to take him anywhere, but to carry him in gentle presence, moment by moment. At the edge of the lantern-lit trail, the forest opened again to distant mountains, their peaks fading into mist. The lanterns continued beside him until the last one, its glow flickering faintly before fading softly into morning. The traveler paused, bowing slightly to the path, to the lanterns, to the quiet of the forest. He lifted his own lantern once more and continued, carrying the soft light within him. A reminder that even in shadow, there was warmth, even in silence, there was guidance. And so he walked on, the path of lanterns behind him, its glow lingering in his heart, steady and calm, as the mist and morning light embraced him once more. Chapter 15 The Misty Plateau. The trail rose gently once more, carrying the traveler toward a plateau high above the forest. Mist clung to the slopes, soft and pale, drifting across the rocks like slow, silent waves. The air here was cooler, tinged with the scent of earth and stone, and each breath felt like a quiet cleansing. He stepped carefully along the plateau, where patches of grass grew between stones slick with dew. The mist moved with him, curling around his feet and ankles, shaping the world into a dreamlike haze. Peaks rose faintly in the distance, blurred by the soft white veil, giving the sense that the plateau floated between earth and sky. A small stream ran through the plateau, its waters clear and gentle. The traveler knelt to drink, cupping the cool liquid in his hands. Its touch was calming, and the steady trickle carried a soft, unbroken rhythm that seemed to echo through the mist. He rose and walked on, feeling the openness of the plateau. The wind moved softly across the high ground, stirring his hair, brushing against the stones, shaping shadows and light in subtle, graceful ways. He paused at a low boulder, sitting briefly to rest, letting the mist envelop him, embracing him in quiet and calm. Here, at the edge of the plateau, the world seemed suspended. Every sound was softened, every motion slow. He felt as though he could stay here forever, drifting with the mist, listening to the gentle rhythms of the plateau, letting time stretch and fold around him. Chapter 16: The Twilight Grove. Leaving the plateau behind, the traveler descended into a grove bathed in twilight. The trees here were older, their trunks wide and gnarled, branches tangled in quiet complexity. Light filtered through their leaves in long, fading streaks, casting soft shadows that moved like dancers across the moss-covered ground. The air was fragrant with the scent of pine, cedar, and the faintest touch of wildflowers. The breeze whispered through the leaves, carrying tiny rustling sounds that seemed like voices, soft and indistinct, speaking only in rhythm with the wind. The traveler walked slowly along the grove's path. The moss cushioned each step, and small stones shifted gently under his weight. Shadows lengthened as the sun dipped lower, yet the twilight did not feel dark. It was gentle, protective, a quiet time between day and night. He paused beneath a wide-branched tree, sitting upon a root thick with age. Above him, leaves trembled in the wind, casting moving patterns of light and shadow. A single bird settled briefly in the branches, its silhouette dark against the fading light, then lifted and disappeared into the trees. The traveler closed his eyes. He listened to the wind, to the soft movement of leaves, to the distant sound of water trickling somewhere in the grove. He breathed slowly, letting the twilight enfold him, letting the calm of the grove settle deep within his chest. When he rose, he felt as if the grove itself had whispered something into him, a gentle reminder that, even as the light fades, the world remains present, patient, and calm. He stepped onto the path again, carrying the peace of twilight with him, ready for the next stage of his journey. Chapter 17: The Silent Waterfall. Descending from the twilight grove, the traveler heard the faint murmur of water. Following it, he came upon a waterfall hidden deep within a narrow canyon. Its waters fell in a thin, silver curtain, spilling into a pool so clear that stones at the bottom seemed suspended in air. Despite the constant movement, the waterfall seemed silent, as if the forest had hushed itself to let the traveler appreciate the gentle rhythm. Mist rose from the pool, curling around rocks and ferns, softening the edges of the world. The traveler knelt at the pool's edge, cupping water in his hands. The liquid was cool, carrying the scent of moss and stone. He drank slowly, letting the sound of the water flow into his chest, steadying his breath and calming his thoughts. He remained there for a long time, watching droplets cling to leaves, shimmer in the sunlight, and fall into the pool. The waterfall's voice was not loud, yet it resonated in his mind, a quiet melody of patience and presence. Chapter 18: The Hidden Pavilion. Leaving the waterfall, the traveler followed a narrow path along the canyon. It led to a small pavilion tucked beneath a canopy of maple and cedar. The wooden structure was simple, yet elegant, its eaves curved gracefully, its floor polished smooth by time and countless visitors. The air inside the pavilion was cool and fragrant. The traveler set down his lantern and stepped inside. Sunlight filtered through the trees, painting the wooden beams with patterns of light and shadow. A gentle breeze moved through the pavilion, carrying the rustle of leaves and the faint scent of distant flowers. He sat upon the wooden floor, crossing his legs, and closed his eyes. The sounds of the forest outside, the wind, the distant water, birds calling flowed in gentle harmony. In the pavilion, he felt as if time had slowed, each heartbeat and breath part of the stillness, each movement a part of the forest's quiet song. Chapter 19: The Silver Meadow. Beyond the pavilion, the path opened to a meadow bathed in silver light. Dew clung to each blade of grass, reflecting the early sun in tiny sparkling gems. The meadow stretched wide, surrounded by hills that rose gently in the distance, their slopes softened by morning mist. The traveler walked slowly through the grass. Each step pressed softly into the earth, leaving delicate impressions that would vanish with the rising sun. The air was filled with the scent of wildflowers, the faint hum of insects, and the soft brush of wind. He paused in the center of the meadow, letting the sunlight warm his face and shoulders. Around him, the grass shimmered with dew, swaying gently as though acknowledging his presence. He breathed slowly, deeply, feeling the meadow's calm seep into his chest, his mind, his very being. Then he sat upon a soft patch of moss, letting the silver light surround him. The meadow was quiet, yet full of life, a place suspended between dream and waking, a moment held in perfect stillness. Chapter 20: The Moonlit Pond. The traveler followed a gentle descent from the silver meadow, guided by the soft curve of the trail. Soon, he arrived at a pond that mirrored the sky. Though the sun had risen fully, a veil of mist hovered above the water, giving it the ethereal glow of moonlight. The pond's surface was smooth and still, broken only by the occasional ripple of a fish or falling leaf. Trees leaned over the water, their reflections stretched and softened, blending sky and earth into a single, silent world. The traveler knelt at the edge, cupping the cool water in his hands. It was calm, carrying no rush, no demand. He drank slowly, savoring the sensation of clarity and quiet flowing through him. The air smelled of water and earth, pure and faintly sweet. He remained for a long time, watching the mist curl across the surface, listening to the pond's subtle voice. Each ripple, each tiny movement, was a gentle note in the endless song of the forest. He breathed with it, his heart aligning with its rhythm, feeling peace settle deep within. Chapter 21 The Bamboo Grove. From the pond, a narrow path led the traveler into a grove of bamboo. The tall stalks rose like green pillars, swaying gently in the breeze. Their leaves rustled softly, producing a whispering sound that filled the grove, delicate and endless. Sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting moving shadows on the ground. Each step forward made no sound, cushioned by fallen leaves and moss. The grove felt alive yet serene, a place where time itself seemed to slow. The traveler walked slowly, letting the gentle music of rustling bamboo guide him. He paused to touch a stalk, feeling its smooth strength. He closed his eyes and listened, letting the grove's whispers wash over him like a soft tide. Here, among the bamboo, he felt fully held by the forest, protected, observed, yet free. Every breath aligned with the rhythm of the leaves, every heartbeat in harmony with the quiet movement around him. When he stepped out of the grove, he carried its whispers with him, a gentle presence that would remain in the hush of his mind long after he left. Chapter 22 The Mountain Summit. The path climbed steadily, leading the traveler to the mountain's summit. The air grew cooler, clearer, carrying the scent of stone and pine. At the top, the world opened wide, revealing valleys and ridges that stretched far beyond the eye. Mist lingered below, rolling gently over forests and rivers, while above, the sky was pale and infinite. The traveler paused, setting down his lantern. He breathed slowly, letting the height and stillness fill him. Every sound seemed distant, the wind whispered, carrying nothing but presence. He felt as if the summit itself had paused with him, holding a moment between earth and sky. He walked to the edge of the ridge, peering into the valleys below. Each fold of land was softened by haze, each peak outlined faintly in light. The scene was vast yet gentle, a reminder that even the grandest places can carry serenity. The traveler sat on a flat stone, letting the wind brush against his face. The silence was not empty, but full, filled with the rhythm of distant streams. The rustle of trees far below, and the patient pulse of the mountains themselves. He closed his eyes, feeling the summit's calm seep into him, steadying every thought and breath. Chapter 23 The Sunset Valley. Descending from the summit, the traveler entered a wide valley bathed in the colors of late afternoon. Sunlight draped the hills in warm gold, and the sky glowed with soft shades of pink and orange. Shadows stretched long across fields and forests, moving slowly with the sun's passage. A river ran through the valley, its surface catching the sunlight in silver threads. The traveler followed its gentle curve, stepping lightly on the soft earth. Flowers and grasses brushed against his sleeves, their scent mingling with the cool air. He paused beneath a lone tree by the river bank, sitting on a patch of moss. The sun dipped lower, casting a calm glow across the valley. The river gurgled softly, birds called faintly from distant branches, and the air carried the quiet hum of life moving gently through the world. As he watched the sunset, he felt a deep sense of completion, as if the journey itself had been leading him to this calm. Each breath, each heartbeat, aligned with the rhythm of the valley. The traveler rested there for a time, letting the warmth of the sun, the sound of the river, and the gentle hush of nature fill him. Chapter 24 The Final Lantern. The traveler followed a winding path back toward the heart of the forest. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky in soft shades of lavender and gold. Along the trail, small lanterns appeared, their glow gentle and unwavering, as if awaiting his arrival. He approached the final lantern, set upon a stone pedestal at the edge of a clearing. Its light was soft yet steady, casting long, warm shadows that moved gently across the moss and leaves. The traveler knelt, bowing his head in quiet reverence, sensing that this lantern held not only light, but the memory of every step he had taken. He lifted his own lantern beside it, letting the two flames mingle in silent harmony. The glow reached out to the forest, the hills, and the sky above, as if connecting all the places he had visited: the plateau, the grove, the meadow, the pond. Each moment of the journey was reflected in this gentle light, steady and eternal. The traveler sat in quiet contemplation, letting the warmth of the lanterns fill him. The forest was silent yet full. He could hear the soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, and the hum of life moving gently in the world. And in the center of it all, the lanterns shone, steady and calm, a final guide to peace and rest. Chapter 25 The Journey's End. Rising at last, the traveler continued along the path, carrying the memory of the lanterns with him. The forest opened gradually, revealing the familiar river that had begun his journey. The soft hills, and the gentle sunrise that welcomed him as if nothing had changed, yet everything had. He paused at the river's edge, looking at the water reflecting the morning light. The world seemed infinite, yet safe, every detail imbued with calm. He breathed deeply, feeling the rhythm of the journey still in his heart: the fox of dawn, the cherry blossoms, the whispers of pine, the hidden spring, the temple bells, the paths of light and shadow, the mist, the summit, the sunset. Each memory settled like a pebble in a stream, gentle, steady, and unshakable. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the forest, the mountains, and the river embrace him fully. There was no hurry, no destination to reach, only presence, only quiet, only the gentle continuation of life. When he opened his eyes, the traveler took one last step forward. Feeling the earth beneath his feet, the air around him, and the soft light of the forest guiding him onward. The journey had ended, yet its calm remained within him, a quiet song that would linger in his heart forever. And so he walked on, not in haste, not with fear, but in gentle peace, carrying the entire journey with him, step by step, breath by breath, into the endless calm of the morning. Shadows beneath the maple canopy. Prologue: the whispering leaves. In the quiet of early morning, a soft wind rustled through a grove of maple trees. Their leaves, painted in shades of red and gold, whispered gently above a narrow path. The sunlight filtered through the canopy, scattering patterns of warmth and shadow across the moss-covered ground. A lone traveler stepped onto the path, sandals brushing lightly against the earth. The air was cool, carrying the scent of wet leaves and distant pine. Each breath was a rhythm, each step a gentle pulse in the quiet forest. The path stretched ahead, winding between trunks and boulders, inviting the traveler to move slowly, to notice the subtle sounds and motions of the world. Here, in the shadow of the maples, the forest spoke not with words, but with soft motions. A leaf falling, the sway of branches, the faint call of a bird hidden above. The traveler listened, letting the whispers of the leaves flow into him, and with each moment, he felt a calm settling deep within. The forest was not hurried. It did not demand. It simply existed, patient and eternal, holding the traveler gently within its embrace. And so the journey began, step by step, breath by breath, beneath the quiet, whispering canopy of maple leaves. Chapter 1: The Moss-Covered Trail. The path led the traveler deeper into the forest. Moss softened every stone and root, so that each step was soundless, leaving only faint impressions that would vanish by morning. Sunlight spilled through the canopy, creating pools of warm gold among the shades of green and crimson. Along the trail, small signs of life appeared. A rabbit paused to nibble on tender shoots. Insects shimmered in the sun, and the wind carried the delicate scent of flowers hidden among ferns. The traveler inhaled slowly, letting the scents and sounds fill him. He paused beside a stream, where water trickled over smooth stones. The surface shimmered, reflecting leaves above and sky beyond. Kneeling, he cupped the cool water in his hands and drank. Each sip was crisp and pure, refreshing yet calming, as though the stream carried the rhythm of the forest itself. Continuing along the moss-covered trail, the traveler felt the forest embrace him. Shadows and light shifted constantly, yet the path never faltered. Each step was deliberate, each breath measured. Time itself seemed to stretch, allowing the traveler to move through the forest at the pace of the leaves' whispers. The moss-covered trail wound on, leading him to the heart of the forest. There was no urgency, no destination, only presence, only quiet, only the gentle guidance of nature as he walked beneath the red and gold canopy. Chapter 2: The Hidden Grove. The trail curved gently into a secluded grove, its entrance framed by two ancient maples. Sunlight pierced the canopy in thin streaks, illuminating patches of soft moss and fallen leaves. The air was still, carrying the faint scent of earth and damp bark. Within the grove, shadows and light danced slowly across the ground. A small fox padded along a hidden path, disappearing as if it were part of the forest itself. Birds called softly from the treetops, their notes blending into the whisper of leaves. The traveler knelt beside a moss-covered stone and rested his hands upon it. Its surface was cool and solid, grounding him as he listened to the quiet music of the grove. Each breath he took matched the rhythm of the leaves above, steady and unhurried. Time seemed to pause here. Every rustle, every sway of branch and leaf, felt deliberate and sacred. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the grove's calm seep deep into his chest, filling him with a quiet that lingered long after he moved on. Chapter 3: The Autumn Stream. Following the grove, the traveler came upon a narrow stream winding through the forest. Its water was clear and cold, tumbling over smooth stones in a gentle murmur. Fallen leaves floated on the surface, drifting lazily with the current. He crouched beside the stream and touched the water with his fingertips. It slipped over him, cool and soft, carrying the scent of autumn and the promise of quiet. A dragonfly hovered above the water, its wings catching the light, then lifted and disappeared into the trees. The sound of the stream filled the traveler's senses, blending with the rustling leaves and distant birdsong. Each ripple seemed like a note in a soft, endless melody, a rhythm that guided his thoughts into stillness. He sat for a while, letting the water's gentle motion align with his own breathing, steadying his mind as he prepared to continue. Chapter 4: The Lantern Glade. The path widened and opened into a small clearing, dotted with stone lanterns, some half covered in moss, others freshly polished by travelers long ago. The lanterns glowed faintly even in the morning light, as if carrying the memory of countless dawns and dusks. The traveler walked slowly between them, letting his eyes follow their soft glow. Shadows stretched and shifted as the sun moved higher, painting the ground with delicate patterns. He paused beside a lantern, resting a hand on its cool stone. The warmth of its presence spread through him, a quiet reminder of patience and continuity. Birds flitted through the clearing, their movements light and fleeting, yet the lanterns remained steady, unhurried. The traveler took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of moss, stone, and leaves, and felt the gentle pull of the forest's rhythm once more. With each step, the trail seemed to guide him further into quiet, deeper into the serenity of the maple canopy. Chapter 5: The Crimson Bridge. The trail led the traveler to a small bridge painted a deep crimson, spanning a narrow creek. Sunlight flickered through the maple leaves, casting moving red and gold reflections onto the water below. The bridge felt ancient yet cared for, as if it had witnessed countless travelers pass beneath the canopy. He paused on the bridge, resting his hands lightly on the railing. The gentle murmur of the creek below combined with the soft rustling of leaves, creating a harmonious melody that seemed to slow time itself. Shadows stretched across the planks in long, delicate lines, and the traveler let his breath fall into rhythm with the whispering water. For a moment, he simply stood, observing the play of light and movement. Every leaf, every ripple, every flicker of sunlight felt like a note in the forest's endless, quiet song. Then, stepping carefully, he continued across, guided by the steady calm that the bridge inspired. Chapter 6: The Misty Hollow. Beyond the crimson bridge, the path dipped into a hollow filled with morning mist. Trees loomed like quiet guardians, their branches heavy with dew. The traveler walked slowly, each step softened by moss and fallen leaves. The mist thickened and thinned in waves, curling around roots and stones, turning the hollow into a dreamlike space. Small insects shimmered in the filtered light, and a few birds called softly from high branches. The air smelled of damp earth, pine, and the faint sweetness of fallen leaves. Each inhalation felt like a cleansing, each exhalation releasing the weight of the world outside the forest. He paused beside an old boulder, sitting upon it to rest. The mist swirled gently around him, blurring edges and softening shadows. Time seemed suspended, the hollow holding him gently as he listened to the quiet rhythms of wind, leaf, and distant water. Chapter 7: The Silent Clearing. The mist lifted gradually as the traveler emerged into a small clearing. Sunlight spilled over the grass, illuminating tiny insects and the occasional fallen leaf. The clearing was silent in a way that was alive rather than empty, filled with the subtle hum of nature's ongoing motion. He knelt to touch the ground, feeling the soft grass and moss beneath his palms. Shadows of branches above danced slowly with the wind, and the traveler allowed his breathing to align with their rhythm. Each moment here felt like a pause in the world, a reminder of stillness and presence. A lone bird perched on a low branch, its song brief and delicate, fading quickly into the hush of the clearing. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the quiet wrap around him, carrying him gently toward the next stretch of the path. Chapter 8: The Autumn Canopy. From the clearing, the path climbed once more into the forest. The maples above formed a dense canopy, their red and gold leaves interlacing like a woven tapestry. Light filtered through in warm patterns, shifting slowly as the wind moved branches and leaves. The traveler walked slowly beneath the canopy, feeling the warmth of sunlight mixed with cool shadow. The air carried the scent of autumn dry leaves, pine, and the faint sweetness of distant flowers. Every step was soft and deliberate, cushioned by moss and leaf litter. He paused to look upward, watching leaves tremble in the breeze. Each movement seemed deliberate, yet gentle, a quiet dance that reminded him of the calm, persistent rhythm of the forest. The path wound ahead, promising more beauty, more quiet, and more moments of gentle reflection beneath the maple canopy. Chapter 9: The Whispering Pines. The traveler's path turned toward a grove of tall pine trees. Their trunks rose straight and silent, and the wind moving through their needles produced a soft, continuous whisper. Each breath of air carried the scent of pine resin and earth, calming the traveler's mind. He stepped carefully over roots that curved like gentle waves across the forest floor. Sunlight filtered through high branches, forming faint lines of light that moved slowly across the mossy ground. The pines seemed ancient, patient, and steady, their quiet strength grounding him as he walked. Pausing beneath the tallest tree, he placed a hand upon its rough bark. Its solidity reminded him of the slow, unhurried rhythm of the forest. He closed his eyes, listening to the whispers of needles above, and let the steady, gentle sound fill his chest with calm. Chapter 10: The Hidden Spring. The trail led to a secluded hollow where a spring bubbled from the base of the mountain. Water spilled over smooth stones into a shallow pool, its surface reflecting the colors of the surrounding forest. Mist rose softly from the pool, clinging to moss and ferns around its edges. The traveler knelt beside the spring, dipping his hands into the cool, clear water. Its touch was refreshing, calming, and the murmur of the stream became a rhythm he could follow with his breath. Sunlight broke through the canopy above, illuminating tiny droplets in the air like faint, sparkling stars. He lingered there for a while, observing leaves drifting on the water and listening to the gentle murmur of the spring. Each ripple, each drop, seemed deliberate, steady, and eternal. Rising at last, he felt the calm of the hidden spring accompany him as he continued along the path. Chapter 11: The Bridge of Clouds. The path climbed higher, reaching a narrow wooden bridge stretching across a fog-filled gorge. Clouds curled around the mountain slopes below, soft and white, giving the impression that the bridge floated in the sky. Stepping carefully onto the planks, the traveler felt the sway of the bridge beneath his feet. The mist moved gently around him, softening the distant peaks and valleys. He paused midway, setting down his lantern and looking outward. Faint mountain peaks appeared like islands in a sea of clouds, and the world felt both vast and intimate. The traveler continued slowly across, allowing the quiet rhythm of the mist and clouds to guide him. Each step was deliberate, yet gentle, and he felt as if he walked not only through space, but through a moment suspended between dream and waking. Chapter 12: The Temple Bells. Descending from the bridge, the traveler entered a quiet temple courtyard. The building's wooden eaves curved gracefully, and a bell hung silently above the hall. At the first touch of a wooden striker, the bell resonated, its deep tone carrying through the forest like a slow, gentle wave. The traveler knelt and listened as the bell rang again and again. Its sound was steady and calm, filling every corner of the courtyard and threading through the forest beyond. Each vibration seemed to align with his own breathing, steadying his heart and mind. Rising at last, he walked past the temple hall, carrying the lingering resonance of the bell within him. The sound became a quiet companion, guiding him forward along the winding trail beneath the maple canopy. Chapter 13: The Garden of Shadows. Beyond the temple, the traveler discovered a hidden garden. Tall maples and cedars intertwined above, letting streaks of sunlight filter through the canopy. Shadows shifted slowly across moss and stone, creating intricate patterns that seemed to breathe with the forest. A small stone lantern, half covered in moss, glowed faintly even in the morning light. The traveler knelt beside it, feeling the cool stone beneath his hands. He listened to the rustle of leaves and distant birds, letting the quiet rhythm of the garden settle deep into his chest. Time seemed to pause here. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every faint whisper of wind felt intentional, deliberate. The traveler closed his eyes, allowing the garden's calm to enfold him and guide his breath into a slow, steady rhythm. Chapter 14: The Path of Lanterns. The path widened into a corridor lined with small stone lanterns, their warm glow faint but steady. The traveler walked slowly, letting the soft light guide him. Each lantern cast gentle shadows, moving subtly with the breeze. Along the trail, moss and fallen leaves cushioned his steps. He paused beside one lantern, resting a hand on its base, feeling the quiet persistence of its light. The corridor seemed endless yet intimate, the lanterns forming a chain that connected each moment of the journey. With every step, the traveler felt the forest's rhythm more deeply, the gentle sway of branches. The soft murmur of distant water, the hush of life moving quietly around him. The path of lanterns guided him onward, carrying him further into peace and stillness. Chapter 15: The Misty Plateau. The trail climbed to a high plateau where mist rolled across the slopes like slow, silent waves. Grass and stones were wet with dew, and the air smelled of earth and mountain pine. The traveler moved carefully, feeling each step through soft moss and uneven rocks. Mist curled around boulders and trees, creating a dreamlike landscape. The distant forest below was softened by white haze, and the peaks beyond seemed to float in the sky. He paused beside a low rock, sitting to rest and breathing in the cool, clean air. The plateau was vast and quiet, yet alive. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call, every breath of wind became part of the tranquil rhythm of the high place. The traveler lingered, letting the plateau's calm seep into his being. Chapter 16: The Twilight Grove. Descending from the plateau, the traveler entered a grove bathed in soft twilight. Branches interlaced above, filtering the fading sun into gentle stripes of light across the mossy ground. Shadows lengthened slowly, stretching over rocks and roots. The grove was alive with quiet movement, the rustle of leaves, the soft flight of a bird, the faint hum of insects settling for the night. The traveler walked slowly, letting the forest's rhythm guide his breath. Each step was deliberate, yet effortless, cushioned by moss and leaf litter. He paused beneath a wide-branched tree, sitting on a root to rest. The twilight enveloped him, blending light and shadow into a gentle embrace. Every sound, every motion, every breath became part of the grove's unhurried song. When he rose, he felt the forest's calm within him, ready to continue his journey. Chapter 17 The Silent Waterfall. Descending from the twilight grove, the traveler heard the faint murmur of water. Following it, he came upon a waterfall hidden in a narrow canyon. Its waters fell in a thin silver curtain into a clear pool below, where stones seemed suspended in air. Though the water moved constantly, the waterfall felt silent, as if the forest had hushed itself. Mist rose gently from the pool, curling around ferns and moss, softening every edge of the world. The traveler knelt beside the water, letting it flow through his hands. Its cool touch brought calm, and the murmuring sound became a rhythm for his breath. He lingered, observing leaves drifting and droplets falling, each movement deliberate and eternal. Chapter 18 The Hidden Pavilion. Following a narrow trail along the canyon, the traveler discovered a small pavilion beneath a canopy of maples and cedar. The wooden structure was simple yet elegant, its floor smooth and polished by time and countless visitors. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, painting beams of light across the pavilion. A gentle breeze carried the rustle of leaves and faint scents of distant flowers. The traveler sat upon the wooden floor, closing his eyes and listening to the quiet music of the forest. Time felt suspended. Each breath and heartbeat aligned with the rhythm of leaves, water, and wind. The pavilion held him gently, allowing him to rest before continuing his journey. Chapter 19 The Silver Meadow. Beyond the pavilion, the path opened to a meadow bathed in silver morning light. Dew clung to blades of grass, reflecting the sunlight like tiny sparkling gems. Hills rose softly in the distance, softened by mist. The traveler walked slowly, each step pressing lightly into the earth. The meadow's fragrance of wildflowers and the faint hum of insects filled the air. He paused in the center, letting sunlight warm his face and shoulders, and sat upon a soft patch of moss. The meadow was quiet yet full of life, suspended between dream and waking. He let its stillness seep deep into his being, carrying calm and gentle energy with him. Chapter 20 The Moonlit Pond. The trail led to a pond that mirrored the sky, its surface calm and still. Though it was daytime, a light mist gave the water the ethereal glow of moonlight. Trees leaned over the edges, their reflections blending sky and earth into one tranquil scene. The traveler knelt, cupping water in his hands. It was cool, soft, and calming, carrying the rhythm of the forest itself. Ripples spread slowly, aligning with his breathing, each one a quiet note in the pond's endless song. He lingered, listening to the faint murmur of water and wind, letting the serenity of the pond fill him. With a final deep breath, he rose, carrying the pond's quiet glow with him as he continued along the path. Chapter 21 The Bamboo Grove. The traveler entered a grove of tall bamboo. The slender green stalks rose like pillars, swaying gently in the breeze. Their leaves rustled softly, creating a whispering sound that filled the grove with delicate, continuous music. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting moving patterns of light and shadow on the forest floor. Every step he took was softened by fallen leaves and moss, each footfall blending with the grove's rhythm. The traveler paused, touching the smooth surface of a bamboo stalk. He closed his eyes, letting the gentle whispers envelop him, aligning his breath with the steady, calming pulse of the grove. Chapter 22 The Mountain Summit. The path climbed steadily, leading to a mountain summit. The air grew cooler and clearer, carrying the scent of stone and pine. At the top, the traveler could see valleys and ridges stretching far beyond, their peaks softened by distant mist. He paused at the edge of the ridge, watching clouds drift over the valleys below. The world felt vast yet intimate, every breath aligning with the steady rhythm of wind and distant bird calls. Sitting on a flat rock, he let the summit's stillness fill him. Each heartbeat and exhalation became part of the mountain's gentle pulse, leaving him calm and present. Chapter 23 The Sunset Valley. Descending from the summit, the traveler entered a wide valley bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. Shadows stretched across the hills, and a river reflected the warm colors of the sky. He walked slowly along the riverbank, feeling the soft earth beneath his feet. Birds called faintly, and the wind stirred leaves in a slow, soothing rhythm. Pausing beneath a lone tree, he sat upon a mossy patch, letting the valley's glow wash over him. The sun dipped lower, painting the landscape in gentle shades, and the traveler allowed the calm to settle deep within his chest. Chapter 24 The Final Lantern. At the end of the valley, the traveler arrived at a small clearing with a single stone lantern, softly glowing in the evening light. Its warmth was quiet yet persistent, a guiding presence after the long journey. He knelt beside the lantern, setting down his own. Their combined glow filled the clearing, casting gentle shadows across the moss and leaves. The traveler sat in silence, feeling the forest, hills, and rivers he had passed through settle into his heart. Every step, every breath, every memory of the journey was reflected in the steady glow of the lantern. Chapter 25 The Journey's End. The traveler stepped softly from the clearing, carrying the gentle glow of the final lantern within him. The forest stretched quietly around him, familiar yet ever-changing, every leaf and branch a part of the world he had wandered through. He followed a narrow path that led to a calm river, its surface reflecting the first hints of dawn. Mist hovered above the water, soft and slow, like a curtain separating the forest from the waking world. The traveler paused, inhaling the cool, fragrant air, feeling the rhythm of his journey align with the river's gentle flow. Every step he had taken across mossy trails, under maple canopies, beside streams and waterfalls, through bamboo groves and misty plateaus was now a quiet memory resting in his heart. Each moment of the journey, every sound of wind, water, and leaf, lingered as a calm, unbroken thread of peace. He knelt briefly beside the river, dipping his hands into the cool water, letting it carry the forest's stillness through him. Rising, he looked toward the horizon, where the sun's early light kissed the peaks and valleys he had traveled through. The traveler walked onward slowly, unhurried, knowing the journey had ended, yet its quiet would remain. The lantern's glow, the whispers of leaves, the rhythm of water and wind, they all traveled with him, settling deep within his chest. And so he moved forward, step by step, breath by breath, into a world filled with light, calm, and endless gentle presence. The forest, the mountains, the streams, all the places he had wandered remained within him, a quiet song that would carry him, forever guiding him toward rest.